Good morning and welcome to our weekly webcast. If you have any questions, please type them here in the comment field here on the right side of the screen, and we'll get started once we get a couple of questions. And please don't feel that you only can ask one question. Ask as many as you want. And if I haven't answered your question correctly, put me on the spot and push me to answer it correctly, or ask follow-ups. Thank you. Fujimori-san, good morning. Good to see you again. Good to see you. Please let me know if anybody has questions. And again, once the questions start, once people type them here, then we'll get going. And so I was actually, I want to show you something. I was in Brazil for the past week. It was a great trip. And the Udemy, I visited the Udemy office there, and they gave me some great coffee, a great t-shirt, and all that amazing stuff. Oh, hi, Cassandra. How are you, Tiger? Good to see you. Good morning, Raphael. So yeah, feedback on Brazil. That's what you're asking about, right? Cool. So the trip was magical. I really enjoyed it. And so I flew down to Sao Paulo. It took 14 hours. I had to fly through Panama. And then once I got there, which was around midnight on Friday, then on Saturday, I gave a presentation at a Brazilian venture capital company called Startse. And I gave a presentation on the future of education and my humble thoughts on the future. Pardon me. And so what I'll do is once they've uploaded the video, I'll show it to you within the next week or so. It was a lot of fun. Hey, Fabricio, how are you? Oh, you live in the Bay Area. You're from Brazil. Where are you from, man? And then, what I did also is I went to a football game, a soccer game, with Sergio, who heads up the office for Udemy Brazil. And it was a magical experience, man. It was incredible. We saw Palmeira, which is his team, and I had to wear green. And the one thing I'll say about South American or maybe Brazilian football games or Latin America or football in general, meaning soccer outside of America, it was an unbelievable experience because everybody was so passionate. And I'm going to write a vlog on this maybe today or tomorrow or the next day. And when I go to sports events in Canada, where I'm from, and we score a goal or hit a home run, if it's the last game of the World Series and my Blue Jays win, we go crazy. Right? Like in a good way, happy. In Brazil, at the game I went to, every single goal they scored was a huge outpouring of emotion. It was incredible. And it's no surprise to me that that a lot of great festivals are in Brazil, like Carnival, etc. And what I did the next day was I went actually just for a day trip I went to Rio, which is about an hour flight max from Sao Paulo. And I got to tell you, man, I've been to a lot of cities, a lot of countries in the world. I used to like Barcelona, was my favorite. It's now Rio. It is the most beautiful country I've ever, or city I've ever seen. I took my drone everywhere. I'm really excited to upload the video footage and show all of you, which I will do so in the next couple of days on my vlog. And so it was amazing. It was just an incredible experience. I loved it. And if any of you get the opportunity to ever go to Brazil, please do it. It's such a massive economy, Brazil. And I invested a lot in it years ago. I used to work at a hedge fund called Pequot. And what I did, my fund was we invested a lot in Brazil because we were excited about Brazil. A lot of people are terrified about the political environment there, but I like investing when everyone else is scared. That's the best, right? When there's fear or blood in the streets. I know it's harsh, as people say. And so, as you know, there's a big election coming I think it's a couple of days in Brazil. And one leader is more right-wing than Trump, and the other one is very left-wing. And it's so interesting because the previous president of Brazil, he's in jail, Lula. And Brazilians in general are very warm and welcoming, but one thing many have in common, it's fascinating, is a big distrust for politicians. And the reason is, and I'll tell you, this will be really quick and I'll get to your questions. Again, if you have questions, please type them all in here. But what happened was in the early 1800s, I think 1807, Napoleon was about to invade Portugal. And so the king of Portugal, a guy named João, which is Portuguese for John, João left Portugal, he fled and came to Rio. And he brought 15,000 of his people in his court with him, meaning the people that worked for him, his friends, etc. And then what happened was, it was the first time ever you had a monarchy starting in a new colony. And King João, he declared Rio the capital of the United Kingdom of Portugal, and Brazil as well. And in order for João to get everybody to listen to him, all the different cultural groups in Brazil, he bribed a lot of people. And that's why bribing started, or the whole, I should say, the whole concept of distrusting politicians in Brazil. It's fascinating. It's amazing that the president's in jail right now. But anyway, that's a quick little history on Brazil. They're incredibly passionate down there. And I think that's something that's lacking in many companies, is a sense of passion and pride in what you do. And I think we can learn a lot from the amazing people of Brazil. Okay, now let me move on, and I will answer your questions. And again, if anybody has questions, please type them here. This call will only end when there are no more questions. Okay, so let's get started here. So first one's from Fujimori-san. Do you have any recommended books? I do. So if you haven't read anything from Tony Robbins yet, I highly recommend doing so. It actually changed my life. So he's got this book called Unleash the Power Within. And he actually has these seminars, 4-day seminars, which will add much more value to your life and your success than doing a degree from Harvard Business School, 2/3 of which is BS, HBS, that is. I know I've used that joke before, but I got rejected from Harvard, so I'm allowed to say that. So that's one book, is anything by Tony Robbins. Unleash the Power Within, or The Giant Within was one of his earlier ones, which was great. Another book that I recommend reading, if you're interested in sales, is called The Winner's Dream. And it's by this incredible, who's the co-CEO of a big German software company called SAP. And his name is Bill McDermott. And he's the best salesperson I've ever met in my life. I've learned so much from him. I was an investor in his company for years. But he talks about, Bill McDermott, in his book, The Winner's Dream, he talks about how he hustled to get his first job and become CEO and start companies. And what he did was he had an interview in New York City. He lived in Jersey. He went to New York City and he was interviewing with Xerox. And after the interview, he sat in the waiting room and refused to leave in a nice way. He refused to leave because he said, I told my parents when I go home, I'll have good news about getting a job. So if it's okay with you, I just want to stay here. Anyway, so he was really persistent, and he got a job at Xerox because of that, selling photocopiers. And then he did exceptionally well at SAP because he's very personable. And we often forget that you have to be very likable, very personable in a genuine way in order to do well in business. Business is not about what you know, ever. You know, when we're in high school or undergraduate university, we think that if we keep our heads down and we work really hard and we get good grades, that's how life works. You'll be successful in business and life that way. It's not true. If you want anything in life, you have to ask. If you want a date, you got to ask. I had to ask many, many, many times over and over again. If you want a job, you got to ask. If you want to get a promotion in your company you're working at right now, you have to ask for a promotion. You just do. And if you want a raise, you got to ask for a raise as well. And I'll leave it at that. I got this messy stuff here, sorry, in the background. This is for my car. I attached this to my car so I can do vlogging from the car. Way off topic, sorry. And this here is my my Ronin. That's what I use for vlogging. It's pretty cool. And it's a Chinese company, the best Chinese company in the world, my humble opinion. The company called DJI. They make great drones and great gimbals like that. And I did a lot of drone shots from Brazil, and I'm going to share it with you all over the next couple of days. Just watch my vlog. I took some just taking videos. I love that country. I love Rio. Okay, so Fujimori-san, those are the books that I would recommend. Another one, I wrote a book, and I always feel like a used car salesman whenever I mention my stuff on and try to sell my stuff. But I have a course or a book called 101 Crucial Lessons They Don't Teach You in Business School. which I poured my heart into. And it's based on my meetings with Mark Benioff, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates. After I meet with people that are successful, which means everybody I meet with in life, I always ask them for one piece of feedback. And they provide it to me because I asked. And I put all that wonderful stuff I learned from them in that book of mine. Now, one more quick thing I want to talk about before we jump to the next question. And again, if you have questions, please type them here. Okay, thanks. Is that don't waste your time when you're trying to get a sale or get something done with a company by talking to the wrong person. Go right to the top. Okay, you got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And so I'm going to teach you how to get a meeting with any CEO on the planet. Okay, so all you have to do is you go to the annual shareholder meeting for any company. Why? Because hardly anybody goes to those things, and they're just kind of a formal thing. And so the way it works is and it's easy to go to. You don't have to be a shareholder, right? It's easier than crashing a wedding. I'm thinking of Owen Wilson in my head, but this is easier, okay? And so what you do is you sit in the meeting. It's usually at a hotel, and there's bad coffee. And then unlike good coffee from Brazil. And then what happens is after the shareholder meeting's over, the executives, I mean the CEO, CFO, and the entire management team, they never leave until everyone else leaves. It's just a formality. And the reason is because they're trying to set a good example for the board members that are watching and employees and other senior executives. And so what I've done, and I can't believe nobody does this, is at the end of the meeting, I would go and introduce myself to the CEO, exchange business cards, and then they'd be captive. They would just stay there and listen to me, and I'd be able to talk to them respectfully because they have to set an example. Everybody's watching, all the board members, everyone in the company. And you can always follow up by saying, well, thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed meeting with you, if it's true. And then say, can I meet with, do you have time? Maybe we can grab a coffee at your company one day. Or if there's anybody that you could recommend your company that I could talk to about getting a job at your company or a customer or whatever. And they'll tell you the name of that person. They always do because everybody's watching and they want to appear business friendly. And then what you can do is once you get the name of that person, say it's somebody in human resources, you can email him or her and say, Steve or Mary, the CEO, told me to reach out to you. Do you have time for a coffee? Of course, you're going to say yes. Okay. Anyway, hopefully that helps. Thanks, Gotham. I'm doing well, thanks. I actually got sleep on the plane. It was great. I usually don't. Fabricio from Rio, you're living in Livermore, 17 years. That's awesome. Very cool. Awesome. Okay. I got a question here on, and again, if you have questions, please answer them here. Once there's no more questions, we'll wrap up the call and ask as many as you want, please. Okay. Thank you. So I've got a question. Any idea how to start a political speech? Because it's not mentioned in the type of speeches. Wow. That's a good one. Okay. So here's what you do. You start with a quote. Okay, start with a quote that's very powerful from somebody in whatever country you're in that was an amazing person in the past. Maybe it was a previous prime minister or president or chancellor or whatever it is that did wonderful things for your country. Okay, start off with a speech. Or it can be somebody that's done a lot of good in the world. Like if I were to run for president, which I'll never do, or prime minister, I would start with wanting to be the education president, and I would quote Nelson Mandela right away, and I would say, Nelson Mandela once said, "The most powerful weapon that we can use to change the world is education." Then you pause, and then you discuss why you mentioned that quote. And it works in politics, of course. It works everywhere. And politicians, when they give speeches, they're not speaking from their heart. And they're not making it up. It looks like it, but you'll see a lot of politicians will talk like this, and then they'll turn their whole body, shoulders this way, and talk because there's two screens they're reading off of here and there, right? So just what I would say, Diary, is just speak from your heart and start with an amazing quote. Okay, start with an amazing quote, and then go into your speech after that. And if you have follow-up questions on this, please let me know. But that's a generic enough thing to tell you that I think it works everywhere. Like when I gave my speech in Brazil, what I did was I started off with a beautiful quote from Malala. Okay, that quote was, "Let us pick up our books and our pens. They are the most powerful weapons." Then you pause, and you pause for effect. And at businesses, when you give speeches as well, do that. Okay, and so if you ever want to motivate people, you can actually you can watch movies or videos on YouTube of people in movies giving empowering speeches, right? Or last thing I'll say, Diary, is watch. And I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. Okay, it all depends, but on who's running. But there's a great speech from Obama that he gave in 2004, which I think is the best political speech of all time. See how I pause there? For effect. And I recommend you watch it. He gave that speech in 2004 at the DNC, which is basically an event for Democrats. And then without that speech, he wouldn't have been president. It was an incredible speech. He spoke from his heart. And he gave some great quotes as well. And he was inclusive of everybody. Everybody. Search for that DNC 2004 Obama speech. Okay. And that will be helpful for, anyway, Republicans, Democrats, doesn't even matter. Humans. All right. So let me see the next question here. Again, if you have questions, please write them here. Okay. Let's see. I've got Raphael. Hi, Chris. Have you been to Chile? Are you planning to go there someday? Not yet. I'd love to. But I didn't get much sleep the last night in my hotel because the entire Chilean soccer team or football team was in my hotel at the Intercontinental Hotel in Sao Paulo. All good. But I got this far away from all of your top players, which is kind of neat. I'd love to go. I'd love to go. I heard that there's great Chilean food, wine. I don't drink, but anyway, I threw that out there. A lot of great things there. I would love to go one day. Thank you. Invite me for a speech, and I'll come and speak there for free, of course. Thank you. Okay, so next question. Pardon me. Next question. My dad gave me this coffee cup for Christmas when I was a kid, and it says workaholic. So I've got my coffee here. I know it's overkill, but I never throw anything out my parents give me. Okay. Okay, so I got a question here on good morning, and please enter your questions here. Good morning. What does it mean to short a stock? Okay. The best way to explain it is this. It's the absolute opposite of buying a stock. Okay. And hedge funds, which are kind of like mutual funds, they buy stocks like mutual funds do, and they short stocks. And a hedge fund is called a hedge fund because if you think about the term hedge fund, excuse me. All right. If you think about a hedge fund, the term hedge fund means, like, if you look at your backyard, there's hedges around your backyard. You're protecting your backyard. And so hedge funds will buy stocks and short stocks, bet against them. Okay. And they will protect them in case the stocks they own go down. And I'll explain what that means. And I'll explain the logistics of how a short works on Wall Street or anywhere in the world. Okay. So I used to manage a $1 billion portfolio, and I could only invest in software companies. And so what I would do is I would buy all of my favorite software stocks as longs. And because I worked at a hedge fund, they made us have a certain number of shorts to offset these longs in case the longs went down. Okay, longs means stocks you own. And so what I would always do is I'd always be short companies I knew would not go up a lot, meaning I bet against them, like Microsoft and Oracle, the big uglies at the time. And then if we were in a bear market, it would be the opposite of that. Okay. But when you short a stock, here's how it works. Okay, you're betting that it's going to go down, and if it goes down, you can make a lot of money. But if it goes up, you can lose a lot, like an unlimited amount of money if the stock goes up forever. Which, whatever, it might or might not. So here's how it works. Let's pretend that I work at a big hedge fund, okay, in Connecticut, which is just north of New York City. And let's pretend my name is Bobby Axelrod. Just call me Bobby, and I work at Axe Capital. And I think that a company that makes health drinks going to get sued because people got sick from drinking those health drinks. Okay, this is from that TV show Billions. So what I would do is this. Bobby Axelrod, I manage a hedge fund. I would call up the traders, they're called sales traders actually, that work at the big investment banks like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, whatever, all of these big banks. And I'd say, hey, I want to borrow a lot of shares of this health drink company. And the ticker is ABC, making that up. Okay. I want to borrow a lot of those shares. Can you call your biggest customers, the mutual funds that you work with, and ask them if they'll lend me their shares? Okay. Oh, you'll call me back? Okay, thanks. And then what happens is the traders, the sales traders that work at Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Bank of America, for example, they will then call mutual funds like Fidelity, Putnam, Barclays, whatever, all these big funds. And they'll say, hey, I've got a guy that wants to borrow your shares of ABC. And he's willing to pay you a fee to borrow these shares. Can you lend them to me? Yes? Okay, thank you. Then what happens is Bobby calls back, hey, it's Bobby from Max Capital. Do you have those shares for me? Oh, you do? Okay. Oh, you're going to charge me 5% to borrow them? Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, I'll take them. Thanks. So what will happen is Bobby, the hedge fund dude, will take those shares, okay? And then, which I borrowed, I have to return. I'm going to pay a 5% fee when I return them. Then I'm going to take these shares of ABC Drink Company and I'm going to sell them. Okay, I'm just going to sell them. Okay, I'm selling them. And then I'm going to hopefully wait until the stock goes down a lot. ABC Drink, let's just say it went down, the company for a lot, went down 30%. Bobby would be happy. Bobby would then go and buy those shares back. And Bobby made the money on the difference between where he sold them at and where he bought them at. It's the opposite of buying stock. Then he would call back the person he borrowed the shares from and say, thanks, I'm done, and give them back. That is how a short works. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, please let me know. I don't recommend doing it unless you manage a lot of money and you have to kind of hedge the longs and the shorts, okay? Which means if the stock market goes down, you make money on the shorts, but you lose money on the longs. And anybody has follow-up questions, please let me know. I don't know if this is what you want to hear about. If so, let me know. I'd be happy to talk in a lot of detail. I did this for years. I hated the industry. And I got into it for money, the wrong reasons. Okay, don't ever do anything for money. Okay, so if anybody has any additional questions, please type them here. When there's no more questions, I'll stop the call. So Haroun, I hope that answered your question. I always love having you on because your name rhymes with my last name. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So Fabricio has a question, which is, in what phase of your startup is the best time to search for investors? Okay. So by the way, if you're ever presenting to a lot of people, you can take a sip of water, it'll buy you time to think of the answer, or you repeat the question. And a lot of teachers repeat the question so they can think of the answer. So I'm kind of thinking of the answer here. I don't know what it is yet, but here I go. Just kidding. All right. So I think, okay, so there's something called an MVP. Okay, an MVP in business or tech startups means minimum viable product. Okay, so kind of create the product first, or, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, kind of like visualize it. And once you think you have a good idea, then you can approach investors. And I don't recommend approaching venture capital firms right away. Initially, I want you to approach high net worth investors, okay? And I don't ever want you to get a bank loan because banks are chicken, okay? They don't take risks. Banks, if they sense that you might be paying your loan back late, they will take your house, they will take everything away from you, which is why you have to register your company as a limited liability corporation or LLC. I'm making a business plan course, which is coming out next month, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. It'll help you with this, okay? But I want you to use other people's money. I don't want you to use your own money initially, okay? You can use a little bit. Don't use credit cards, because if you're 50% of startups use credit cards. And what happens is if you can't pay back on time, your credit rating's done and you can't get a house, which hurts your kids or future kids. So what I would do is approach high net worth investors, okay, early on, because high net worth investors, the sales cycle is very short, okay, and they'll be happy to invest in you. And just read my book, and I'll give you the web address here. I won't go into details on it, but you can go to harounventures.com and download my book on networking. And I promise you, I give you my word, if you read that book, you will get meetings with high net worth investors. Okay, there's certain skills and tactics on how to do it, which I talk about in the book. So early on, you can approach them, okay? And then what happens is when somebody invests a lot of money in your company, of course they own part of it now, right? You don't want to set the value too high. So let's say you start a company and somebody approaches you and says, hey, I'll give you $100,000 if I can own 10% of your company, okay? That values your company at $1 million, okay? But if they say, and that's cool, right? It's not very big for a startup. But if they say to you, I'll give you $100,000 for 1% of your company, and that values your company at, 10 million, don't do it, because future investors will not invest because the value probably won't be higher than that. And the original investor gets diluted and upset with you. And what happens is whenever somebody invests in your company, they join your board, right? And everybody in this call will join a board one day if you haven't already. And I don't want to waste your time on this, but there's a vlog I published a couple days ago. Just go to my YouTube channel on introduction to boards. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. But you're always raising money when you start a company, and you want to raise as much as you can when you can, because a lot of people that work at big companies and they're very good at what they do, they want to leave and start their own company that does the same thing, but they forget that half your time is going to be spent trying to raise money, which takes away from what you're good at, and they fail because of that. So instead of trying to raise money every single year, just raise as much as you can when you can. When the economy is doing well, raise as much as you can, because when the economy is doing well, money chases entrepreneurs. But when the economy is not doing well, it's entrepreneurs that are chasing money. Okay, that was a long-winded answer. I apologize. Okay, so next question I've got is from Gotham, and again, please enter your questions here if you have questions. All right, he's saying, hey, hi, Chris. Hi. How do Google, Facebook, or any other free apps make money? Okay, great question. Is advertisement the only main source of income for the free apps? So let me start with Google. Okay, so Google is largely a search company, and so whenever you go to Google and you search for something, you'll see advertisements at the top. That's Google. Okay, and sometimes you'll see it on the side as well if you're using a desktop version of your browser. They make money off that as well. And I've used Google search, and what happens is you usually get charged, meaning me. I get charged when people. Oh, I just realized my microphone's over here. Sorry. The older I get, the better I was. I hope you guys could hear me correctly there. Sorry about that. Jet lagged. No excuse. Just getting old. The older I get, the better I was. Okay. Sorry about that. So basically, if you're Google, they make money off of advertising on the top and on the side, and they also make money when you go to certain websites and you see little ads on the side. It looks like a Google ad, but it's not Google's website. They make money there, and then Google makes a lot of money. And this is probably the most important takeaway from this call today. The second biggest search engine in the world, is YouTube. Google's starting to make money off of YouTube. Of course, Google owns YouTube. And so Google makes a lot of money there. Like if you go and you see little commercials, halfway through a video, when you're watching a YouTube video, Google's making money off that. That's how they make money. Google's basically an advertising company. Now, when it comes to Android, some people use iPhones, some people use Androids. Google doesn't make as much money from Android. It's a very, very low fee. And Google basically almost gives away the Android operating system for free. Thank God they do, though, because if Google didn't do that, we would be paying for every single upgrade to the operating system on Apple. Literally paying. Like when I was, I'm going to show you this. Hold on. When I was a kid, and I still am, I would have to pay for upgrades. And I remember I was so excited when this came out. This is 1995, Windows 95, the operating system. I had to pay for it. It was about, I think it was $119 at the time because I was creating Windows 3. I had to pay stuff. I mean, I really am dating myself. And Windows 95 is basically Mac 84, right? It's amazing what this company got away with. But we all get competition. Competition is always good for the consumer. And so that's why iOS is cheaper, and Google doesn't really make that much money off of Android anyway, right? But their biggest fear is that iOS gets too much market share. Apple gets too much market share, and Apple defaults to a different search engine, right? Which they probably wouldn't do. But anyway, that's where they do it. And a lot of companies, you wonder, why do they do certain things if they're not making money off it? It's because they're long-term greedy, long-term focused, which is the best way to run a company. And so Microsoft, when they released Xbox, the first rendition back in 01 or 02, whatever it was, they did it because they were worried that Sony was going to become the computer company of the future, because Sony with the PlayStation in your living room, that's your computer, the PlayStation, and your television in your living room is the computer monitor. Microsoft was terrified of that. So that's how Google makes money. Let's talk about Facebook now. So Facebook, and then we'll talk about free apps, like freemium apps. Okay. So Facebook makes money from advertising. And we were all terrified as potential investors in the Facebook IPO. And I owned Facebook when I managed my company years ago. When Facebook was a private company, I invested before the IPO, and I sold it because one of the reasons I sold before the IPO was because I was worried about Facebook. They make money from advertising, but if mobile is the desktop of the future and people use mobile in the long run, it's hard to get ads on there, man. The real estate's not there. And if you read the IPO prospectus, meaning the S1 document for Facebook, you can go to sec.gov and read it there. You'll see that they listed that the biggest risk, or one of the biggest risks to their business model, was a lack of a mobile strategy. And so what happened with Facebook was they actually kind of reinvented themselves brilliantly in a certain way by having videos, okay, sponsored stories. And they did it, Zuckerberg did it in such a wonderful way, right? And I am critical of the company as well at times, but they did this well. They did it in such a way that the videos that you and I see on our Facebook feeds, they're actually entertaining. I don't see them as advertisements. I actually kind of enjoy them. For some reason, I'm getting a lot of Conan O'Brien videos lately, and I watch all of them. I don't know. Somehow they figure I like Conan, probably because my maturity level is 7.5. And so that's what happens. Facebook makes a lot of money off of that. Now, Facebook used to make a lot more money from companies like Zynga. Remember Farmville and all those annoying games that you get notifications about? They used to make a lot more money from that, Facebook as a platform, but they've kind of changed their business model strategy a little bit. Now, you'll notice that your parents, I guarantee it, you know what I'm talking about. Your parents, if they use Facebook, you probably don't, or don't as much, because you use, yes, Instagram. And so Facebook realized that the younger demographic, meaning anybody under 25 at the time in 2011 or 12, whatever it was when they bought Instagram, those people don't want to use Facebook. Facebook's for old people. And so they used the IPO proceeds to buy Instagram, and they paid only $1 billion. And if Instagram was a private or public company today, it'd probably have a market cap of 40 or 50 billion. Okay, so what happens is when companies go public, when they do an IPO, people always think about what are the use of proceeds? What do you use the money for? And usually there's two things that companies use the money for from an IPO. The first one is to sell secondary shares, meaning to sell existing shares that employees own, so that employees get rich. And the second reason is to issue primary shares, which are brand new shares. Sorry, if that's in England, that's insulting. This way, okay, good. Is to issue primary shares. And they issue primary shares so that they can use that money for a couple purposes, one of which is to buy other companies, okay, like WhatsApp, which Facebook bought as well for close to $20 billion. And the other use of proceeds is usually to expand the business overseas, okay? Because a lot of startups don't have any representation overseas unless they've raised a lot of money. So anyway, that will sum that up for you. Now, in terms of how do free apps make money, that's a great question. Okay, so we all play games, or at least I do, on my iPad or iPhone, whatever it is. And every now and then, you'll get an ad. Okay, and that's how these companies make it, or it's a free version of an app. They call it freemium. And then what happens is you get so hooked to the app that you get the premium version, which is why I use Log Me In, which is for remote access. I got hooked like digital crack. I shouldn't use that term, but yeah, like digital crack. You get hooked on one of the free apps, and then you end up paying for the other one. But starting apps is really, really tough, right? And if you want to learn how to start and make an app, there's great teachers on Udemy. There's Angela Yu, who's amazing. Or there's Rob Percival, who's a good friend and a great mentor of mine. You can learn, anybody can learn, even if you have absolutely no skills, no tech skills. But the problem with apps, and you'll understand this, because remember when you first started using the Android store or the Apple store, and every week you download like a cool new app, or actually every other day, a new game, like, I don't know, Cut the Rope or Angry Birds or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, innovation stopped. And you look around and there's not any more cool games to download or apps. It's because what happened was venture capitalists and a lot of people realized that it's hit or miss. And if an app does well, maybe it does well for, I don't know, a week, and then you forget about it. And I have so many apps now on my iPhone that I don't categorize them. I just search for them. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question. And if anybody has additional questions, please let me know. And then I see that I got Willem here on the call. Willem, how are you, dude? And every time I see Willem on the call, I have to. It's just tradition now. This is week 7. I have to show this because Willem guessed that correctly. I brought this to Brazil and I got a bunch of laughs. Whatever. 7.5. Okay, so Willem's got a question. Do I have any tips or tricks to connect to everybody? For instance, older people from church or new school classmates. So what I would say, Willem, is I would just use the methodologies that I explain in my book. You can go to harounventures.com and download the book. Or if you don't want to enter in your personal details, you can go to harounventures.com/thank-you. And there's a link there, download the book. You don't have to enter in your name or anything, but just go there and just learn about how to network through that book of mine. Because I promise you, like I've tried everything in my life, networking. And every time I've met somebody that's been incredibly successful at what they do, I always ask them for feedback. And that book is just an amalgamation or combination of greatest hits on what works. So that's my tip, Willem, on how to connect with everyone. Okay, just go to that. Just go read that book. I promise you, it's got every tip you can possibly imagine, so that you can connect with everybody that matters to you. Okay. All right. And if you have follow-up questions for that, and this goes for everybody, please let me know. And so I don't see that many questions left. So please ask questions now, or we'll wrap up the call. That wasn't a threat. I'm just saying, when there's no more questions, we're going to wrap up the call. So thank you. Okay, so Cassandra, Tiger Glory, that's Cassandra, as a question. Financial stuff makes no sense again. How is it that you're allowed to sell something that you borrowed? Okay. So it's kind of like this, okay? Let's say that you're renting an apartment, okay, and you're a student in school, right? I think Cassandra said you're from Florida. So you're in Miami and you're renting an apartment for 12 months and you go to University of Miami. And you live in that apartment when you go to University of Miami from September until May every year. But you still have to pay for June, July, August, even though you're going to leave Miami and go back go on vacation in the summer. So those 3 months you sublet it. Okay, you rent it out to somebody else. That is exactly how shorting works, right? You borrow the stock and then you lend it to somebody else. It's exactly like that, Cassandra. And if that doesn't make sense, please let me know. But it's a big business on Wall Street, and big firms like Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, UBS, Credit Suisse, et cetera, they all have big trading floors. And those big trading floors, they have prime brokerage services, prime brokerage. And they're brokers to lend those shares at a higher rate, prime plus whatever it is. So a little bit off there. So let's see the next question. And Cassandra, if that did not answer your question about shorting stocks, or if it didn't make any sense, please let me know. Okay, let's see here. Daria Mahmoud, another question. Thanks a lot. I'm from Iraq and just took your online course and really helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, and let's go to. I've always wanted to visit the Tigris and Euphrates. I guess the birthplace of civilization. I'd love to tour that entire region. I've only been to the United Arab Emirates. That's it there. So Dubai, which is a cool city. All right, next question. Oh, you're welcome, Fabricio. So Kwong, I have a question. Good morning, Chris. Could you hire a programmer to turn your Excel model into an investment app? Huh. Or is there any other way to do it? You got me thinking, because I have in a lot of my courses, I give away Excel spreadsheets. Think about that offline. Thank you. What you can do is this. So yeah, of course you can. What you do is you go to Fiverr.com. That's Fiverr.com. Fiverr.com. And then when you're at Fiverr.com, what you do is you search for programmers, and search for the word Excel if you want, and app. And I'm sure you will find them there. And they will charge you more than $5 to do it. But they can create an MVP, or minimum viable product, for you, which basically means wireframes. Wireframes is, just think of the architecture of a building, right? So it's kind of a test app. So yeah, you can absolutely do that, absolutely, without a doubt. Okay. Now we have a lot of people on the call, but for some reason I don't see any more questions. And so if you have additional questions, please let me know. I'll just sit here and wait, I guess, or I'll wrap up the call. So if there are no more questions, I guess I can just wrap up this call. So I'll give you guys another 60 seconds or so. And if you're just joining us, I see a couple people just joined us here. Please type in questions now. And again, I'll wrap up the call when there's no more questions. But I'm happy to do this all day. This is fun for me. So please let me keep having fun and ask questions. Oh, hey, Dante. Lay is Dante. And Dante, thanks for the messages offline. Appreciate that. Okay, good morning. What are the most important lessons I've learned in Brazil? So I think that thank you. I think that just a sense of, like, it just reminded me how relationships are more important than product knowledge. And in Brazil, everybody was, maybe it's just I met only nice people, but no, I don't think it's that. Everyone's nice there. And just very personable. And I think that in business, a lot of times we forget that business is about people first and business second. And so the beautiful thing about Brazil is that everybody was so personable and passionate, and they wanted to help and establish relationships was more important than anything else. And I went to the Udemy office in Sao Paulo, which was great. And I love meeting the team there. They're awesome. And I walked in and I was going to give my presentation, and it was very relaxed. We met first for quite a while and just talked, and I forgot. Oh yeah, business is about people, and not about anything else. So I learned, and I went to a soccer game or a football game in Brazil. It was at Palmeiras, a green team. I had to wear green. I remember I was told to wear green, and just the level of passion from the fans. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was incredible to the extent that it's such a big deal there that fans from the opposing team had to sit in another section, which was fenced off with security guards everywhere. I mean, there's no incidents, but they think with their heart there a lot more than here, which I think is a good thing. I love that. So it's no wonder they have a joie de vivre, or just a love of life down there. And anyway, a little off topic there, but I would say that for me, that was the biggest takeaway from Brazil, is just thinking with your heart. Yeah. So anyway, and it was interesting though, because where I went to Sao Paulo, and I didn't realize this, but it was settled by the Italians, and There's really, really good mortadella sandwiches there, and reminded me of Toronto, because Toronto is Toronto has the second most Italians of any city in the world, outside of Rome. Yeah, and I grew up in Toronto, so I loved it. I loved it. So again, if you have questions, please type them here, or we'll wrap up the call. So here we go. Cassandra, Trading Glory. I have another one here. Thank you. I've not seen on the trading interface a button for borrowing. You can buy or sell stocks and a lot of other options. What is the exact action beside just calling the broker? Okay, cool. So when you short a stock, here's what happens, and you might be able to find it on certain trading websites. Or what you can also do is you can buy ETFs, which are short a certain index. Okay, so just do a search on ETF shorting. And so it's like, it was the TLT. I can't remember what it was, but I was able to buy certain ETFs back in 2008, which basically meant I was short a certain index. So you can do it that way. But the way it works in general is you have to borrow a share. So anybody in the world will lend anything. People lend their art, right? Which are on corporate walls, right? Although not anymore in San Francisco, because it gets taxed if it's on the walls at work. You can borrow art. You can borrow a car. You can borrow you can borrow anything, right? And just like I mentioned, Cassandra, earlier, when you're renting an apartment, you're borrowing it, and then when you sublet your rental to somebody else in the months you're not there, you're lending it out. That's exactly how shorting works. Exactly. And if you have follow-ups on that, please let me know. But I don't recommend anybody short stocks on this call. Okay. Let me see here. All right. If you have questions, please type them here. And when there's no more questions, I'll wrap up the call. I got a couple more here, which is good. Please bring them on. I want to do this forever. This is fun. Okay. Next question is from Melvin. Hi, Melvin. How are you? I think it's the first time I've seen you on the call, so welcome. Hi, Chris. How are you doing? Great, thank you. Do I agree with the phrase, nobody gets rich by working from 9 to 5? Huh. Yeah, I think that if you want to accumulate a lot of wealth, the first thing is you think with your heart first and don't see it as a job. And when you if you get up in the morning and tell yourself you're going to work, then, and this goes for everybody, including myself, with all due respect, you're doing it wrong. You need to find your passion, your purpose, your raison d'être. And when you do what you love, you don't have a job, you have a passion. And when you do what you love, you're always thinking about business, what you do. So yes, it is not 9 to 5. It is all the time. And I remember my dad, when I was a kid, he'd come home, and at 7 o'clock, we'd watch the Toronto Blue Jays together. And he was watching it, eating his seeds, but he wasn't really paying attention. He was I could tell he was always thinking about business, right? And that's the way I am as well with my company, right? I love what I do. To humbly be able to help people, it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, I don't work 9 to 5. I work all the time. And when you love what you do, and this is going to sound crazy, but you remember when you wake up in the morning sometimes, and it's before your alarm goes off, and you look, and it's like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. You're like, yes, I can sleep more. Well, when you love what you do, when you wake up in the morning, you look and you see it's 3, 4, or 5, you're like, yes, I can get up. It's a bizarre thing, but just keep searching, and you'll find your passion, your purpose, your sense of being, and what your purpose is in this world. And if you don't know what it is yet, then take online courses until you find it. And I'm not just here to hype, Udemy, although it's a great brand. I love it. There's other places too. Like, I'll tell you what I'm doing right now. So I love video editing. I love movies. I love teaching. I love all that stuff. And I want to take my game to the next level. And so I'm learning now from Ron Howard, who's a great director, on a website called masterclass.com. And I'm also learning, and there's taking a course there by Hans Zimmer. Thank you, Germany, for Hans Zimmer. This guy is awesome, right? The music, I'm just getting chills thinking of his music right now. He wrote the music for The Crown on Netflix. You got to watch it. It's great. Educational too. He also did Interstellar, He did. Anyway, a lot of good stuff. But I'm learning from Hunter. You think, you don't have to play complex, sharps and flats and all this crap I don't get, staccato, whatever. All that it takes is GarageBand and a simple synthesizer. And he teaches you how to make the audience feel something, like a question's being asked or a question's being answered, that sort of thing. And so for those of you that haven't found your passion yet, keep searching online by taking online education courses or just learn from YouTube, whatever, until you find it. And so, yes, nobody gets rich by working from 9 to 5. I agree with that, Melvin. But I'll also say this. If you chase money, you lose your dreams and your money. If you chase your dreams, I promise you, they'll come true over time if you're willing to fail a lot, which is a good thing. And then the money will come accidentally. Nobody reinvents an industry or puts a dent in the world by chasing money. It's like Steve Jobs didn't chase money. He just loved what he did. He just loved it to the extent that he took a calligraphy class at Reed College before he dropped out because he loved it. I don't know. He just loved it. And in the 80s, not many people realize this. The number one seller of printers on the planet in the 80s was Apple for a while. Anybody that's really good at what they do, they just love it. Look at Richard Branson. You ever fly Virgin America or Virgin Atlantic? I mean, everybody there is just so happy. They don't do it for the money. It's just kind of fun, man. And so just follow your heart. And that's why this trip to Brazil it had such a tremendous impact on me because people think with their heart first there. At least the many people I met there, which is the way you have to be in business and in life. And I have to quote Mother Teresa. Sorry, I love her. But she said, if you love a lot until it hurts, then there can be no more hurts, only more love. I butchered that one, but you get the idea. Do what you love doing. Okay, so Haroun got another question. Let's suppose a venture capital firm invests in a startup and the startup fails to take off. In that case, who loses their money, the VC or the founders of the startup? Okay, great question. So everybody loses. Everybody loses, right? Let's say that you invested a little amount in your business. Of course, you'd lose that, but the venture capitalists, they lose everything as well. And venture capital can be a really rough game. It can be dirty. And before you get any investor to invest in your company, and you will all on this call start your own company one day, please do. You got to be comfortable with them because getting bad investors is worse than a bad marriage, because a bad marriage ends unfortunately in divorce, but it's worse with investors because they sit on your board and people are different when it comes to money. And don't get your family involved with money. Don't get loans from your family. Don't do that, man. I mean, if you're buying a house, that's fine. You can pay them back, but don't get family or friends involved. I've done it. And it works sometimes it doesn't. It's just disaster otherwise. But everybody loses money. Everybody loses money if a company goes belly up. And what they'll do, and this is tragic, I hate this, is if people are losing money on your investment and they're on your board and you're the founder, they'll order you around and you'll feel like somebody's bitch. And I'm sorry to swear there, but starting your own company is about independence. And if you get the wrong people to invest in your company and the wrong people sitting on your board, you work for them and your life becomes miserable. Your life becomes miserable. And, they could steal the company from you, right? They can all gang up on you. And so like you look at Steve Jobs, he got fired from Apple, man, back in the late 80s, whatever. And of course he came back and he was heroic, rescued the company. But just be careful, because when a company is not doing well, what happens is they'll fire the CEO, and sometimes they'll force you to sell the company to somebody else, which can be really frustrating. It's interesting because I don't know if anybody on this call has their own company, but when you run your own company, it becomes like it's one of your children. Oh, I love coffee. It becomes like it's one of your children. It's part of you. It's a prosthetic extension of you. And to have somebody take away one of your kids, just be careful, man. You can't get rid of bad investors. And go with your gut too. And you know what it's like in life or in business when your gut tells you not to trust this person, but you go ahead and trust them anyway. And then a while later, you get screwed over. You're like, I knew. Why did I do this? There's this saying, which President Bush Jr. kind of messed up. It was kind of funny. He said, fool me once. No, I'm going to mess it up. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So always go with your gut. Don't do business with people that, if you can avoid it. And I know sometimes you don't have that luxury with people that you don't trust. So just anyway, be careful. And I've talked about before how to tell if somebody's lying or somebody's a scumbag. And there's a couple of ways. I'm going to give you 6 of them actually right now. And while I do this, if you have questions, please enter your questions here in the comment field. When all the questions are done, we'll wrap it up. So 6 ways to tell if you should trust somebody. Okay. Number 1, go with your gut. And I can't explain that, but you know what I mean. Okay. Number 2, I don't trust anybody that cheats on their spouse. Anybody that cheats on their spouse will, of course, cheat on you as well in business or in life, whatever. So I know that's a contentious thing to say because, 50% of all people or marriages end up in divorce. So I'm sure I offended some people there. Sorry. Next one is this. So when I worked at Citadel, a big hedge fund, management hired 25-year FBI and CIA veterans to tell us and train us if somebody's lying. And there's 4 ways. So I already mentioned the other 2, but here's 4 ways from the CIA and the FBI, who are probably tapping my calls now because I mentioned this. The first way is this. And one data point doesn't make a trend, but 2 or 3 or 4 do. So if you see somebody doing all 4 of these or 2 or 3 or whatever it is, then they could be lying. Number 1, if you ask somebody a question that has a yes or no answer, if they ramble the answer, and they usually don't ramble and they're answering the question, there's a good chance they're lying. Okay. The second way to tell if somebody's lying is if they break eye contact when you ask a question. Okay. Now, if I break eye contact a lot, like I look down, it's just who I am, but when I talk sometimes. So if somebody does it, and it's just what they normally do, then obviously you can't factor that in. The next one is if they touch their face, if they usually don't do it when they're answering a question. And the last one is, I don't know if you've seen Meet the Parents, but remember Ben Stiller was hooked up to this lie detector by Robert De Niro. And so what happens is the lie detector tests to see if you're nervous. And if you see somebody kind of shaking their foot a bit, if they haven't had too much coffee, that is, then there's a chance they're lying as well. So anyway, those are the 6 steps to find out if somebody is lying. But the most important one, as always, is go with your gut. Okay, go with your gut. And I'm learning that the older I get, the harder it is to make lifelong friends. I don't know why. When I was a kid, it was easier. Whatever. It is what it is. And when people criticize you unjustly, I want you to psychologically or mentally, whatever, condition yourself to think of it like it's a compliment. Unjustified criticism is nothing more than a disguised compliment. And the more successful you get, the more people will be like that to you. It is what it is. It gets more lonely as you progress. But just see it as a compliment and nothing more. Okay. And you'll see too, you remember when you're younger and somebody asked you about somebody, if you didn't like that person, you said, oh, I don't like this person. Here's why. Well, as we get older and as email is everywhere, whatever, messaging is everywhere, when somebody asks your opinion on somebody, or if you ask somebody an opinion on somebody, if they just say something like, yeah, I know this person, that means they don't like this person as well. So anyway, a little bit off topic, but yeah. Okay, so yeah, Haroun, everybody loses money and it's awful. And if you start a company, and I know it sounds awful, but if you start a company and fail, I want you to see it as a badge of honor. And I'm proud of you if you fail. And I'm proud of my kids, my children, when they fail within reason. Because if they take a risk and try something different, that's a good thing. And you only have to be right in business once. And most people that have ever been incredibly successful in business have failed a lot, a lot. Agatha Christie, before she published her first book, she was rejected. The other thing was C.S. Lewis. Remember the dude that wrote the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? I'm getting hungry for Turkish delight now. But C.S. Lewis failed a lot as well. And the same thing with J.K. Rowling. She failed, like she got rejected like 30 times. But she just kept at it. And so I don't want you to see failure as something shameful. I want you to see it as a badge of honor. And it's tough to start your own business, but what I highly recommend, and some people are going to dislike me for this, but what I highly recommend is when you work for somebody else, I only want you to be 70% mentally there. Okay, get your job done, beat your quota, whatever. But the other 30%, I want you to be thinking constantly of starting your own company, constantly. Okay, all the time. And if your boss is a jerk, which is often the case, and your boss believes in FaceTime, meaning you have to be there at all hours, when you don't really have to be there, and your boss makes you stay at your desk over dinner as well, fine, screw it. Hook up to your iPhone through your hotspot or your Android handset and start building your business model. And I advertised in many countries. What I would do is I'd start a lot of companies over the past 15, 20 years, whatever, when I work for other people. And I wouldn't advertise on the coasts in the US. I wouldn't advertise in San Francisco or New York because I knew a lot of people there. I didn't want them to see it. I'd advertise in Middle America or in different countries. And one of my companies took off in Pakistan, and I advertised over Facebook. But that's how I tested the waters to see if it would work. Okay. And so everybody you see that's successful in life or in business, you don't hear about the failures, man, but they failed a lot. So just take that risk. Take that risk. And my course, the complete business plan course, will be out soon. And it'll help you to size the risk and to decide if you should leave or your company or not. And most companies fail. You know that, right? Most companies go bankrupt because they fail to plan. So if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. Little cheesy quote there. But anyway, my next course will help you out a lot with that so that you will only leave your current employer when you're ready, when you think the business model is great. And I really want to help you. I want to help you change your life and live your life on your terms, right? By starting your own company. And again, I don't think we were meant to work for other people. I mean, we're born free. And then what happens is you go to school and you join the workforce, and then something's taken away from you inside of you. And you'll know something's taken away from you and you're a different person when you realize in your life that you no longer laugh so hard until it hurts. Remember you're a kid and you laugh so hard until it hurt? And then you graduate and you start working for other people and you realize, oh my God, I'm not myself anymore. In the elevator, when somebody senior walks in, I kind of get nervous and, I'm not myself. Why can't I laugh as hard as I used to when I was a kid? Why can't I fall in love with life and what I do? Well, starting your own company is basically your ticket to being yourself. Okay. So anyway, my mission is to help you all, be independent and do your own thing so you can be happy. And I'm sorry, I'm going to swear now, but the worst thing that can happen to you or to us is to realize for the rest of your life that you're somebody else's bitch. And I want you to be self-employed. I want to help you reach those goals. And that's the purpose of all my courses from now on. Okay. So, my wife always criticizes me. She's like, well, I don't understand, Chris. You create these courses, and then you give a lot of them away for free. What kind of business is this? You're giving business advice, but you're a bad business person. I mean, she doesn't say that, but I mentioned that because everybody on this call right now, and I see all your names here. I'm going to give you this next course of mine for free when it comes out. It's called the Complete Business Plan Course. And then I want to help you. I want you to take the course, which is free for all of you. And I want you to create your business plan. And then I want you to get on this weekly call with me And I want to help you build your business for free. And if you're worried that people from work will see your username, then I want you to create another YouTube account when you listen to my weekly calls and just ask me questions in your business plan. And I'll humbly do whatever I can to help you succeed. And the great thing about this next course, and I'm not selling something here because you're going to get it free anyway, everyone on this call. The great thing about this next course is that I created an Excel spreadsheet that will help you. It'll walk through 100 or 200 questions you'll answer, and I'll create your business plan automatically. I can't snap with that finger. Automatically in that course. Okay, I'll get back to questions now. If you have questions, please enter them here. When you're done asking questions, then I'll end this call. But again, ask them here. Okay, so next question is from Cassandra, Tiger Glory. Thanks, Cassandra. How is and Cassandra, you reached out to me a couple weeks ago about that. You remember that topic, okay? We can do it over this call. You know what I mean? Okay, good. All right. Okay, so Cassandra has a question. How is NAFTA now calling USMCA going to influence the stock market? You're feeling? Yeah. Gosh. Whew. Okay, so I'm going to say something that is not going to tell you which politicians I support. Okay, but if you've taken my course, the complete financial analyst course, and the Excel dashboard that you use, there's one section in the middle towards the top that will ask you a question, which will help you invest, which is this: is the political leader in your country good or bad for business? Okay, that's all you have to know. And even if this political leader is someone you don't like, you have to be intellectually honest and unemotional and ask yourself, is this political leader good or bad for business? Okay. And so that's what I would say. And the stock market, basically, what it does is it predicts what the future should look like in 6 months. And it's very sentiment driven as well. And if somebody is going to become prime minister in a certain country, and this person is business friendly and promises a lot of tax breaks and promises to renegotiate certain agreements to help the economy, then the market usually goes up. Okay. And just always try to be unemotional and apolitical, meaning not political, when you invest. And that's what I'll say. Now, completely separate topic now, Donald Trump. Okay, so Donald Trump, and sometimes I'm Republican, sometimes I'm Democrat. I'm not going to tell you what I am now or who I've ever voted for. I didn't vote for him in this election, and I didn't, I'm not a Democrat. I didn't vote for anybody in this election. Okay, so anyway, but the one thing about Donald Trump is this. In the 1980s, I read a book when I was a kid called The Art of the Deal, and Donald Trump wrote it. And Donald Trump, as much as people might like him or not like him, right, we have to be intellectually honest. This guy knows how to get a deal done. Okay. And there's a documentary 3 or 4 part series on Netflix on him. And his first, I lost a couple people there. I understand. I can see in real time people leave. Okay. But his first big deals in New York City, hotel deals, he didn't put up any money for it. He had the mayor and the city of New York City government pay for everything, right, using other people's money. OPM. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. But Cassandra, regarding called the USMCA deal, I think it should be called. I'm Canadian, so I'm a little biased here. I think it should be called the Canada and 2 other countries deal. Okay, just kidding. Am I? All right, next one here. Thank you. And if I haven't answered your question correctly, please let me know. And just enter in your questions here, and I'll answer questions until there's no one left on the call. This is fun for me. Okay, so I got a question from Arctic Panda. Hello, this is the first I've seen. My kid's favorite restaurant is it's a Chinese food restaurant called Panda Express, I think here. Not organic. Okay, so Panda Express so Arctic Panda is asking, I'm currently a chartered accountant in the United Kingdom, but my role doesn't inspire me. What investment roles would you recommend moving into? Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. So, Arctic Panda, what I'll say is business is common sense. A lot of times you have it or you don't. However, people don't realize that the language of business that is not common sense you have to learn is accounting. And I think you can be incredibly successful in business having an accounting background. And if you're not passionate about what you're doing, that's okay. That's okay. Leave and do another finance role you're more passionate about. And so I have a course called the Complete Financial Analyst course. In the first section of that course, I think the last lecture or second last lecture in the first section is I ask you about 20 questions. And based on the questions you answer, I tell you what financial analyst role is best for you, meaning investment banking or sales or trading or equity research or private equity, that sort of thing. So just take that course and you'll see that that questionnaire will help you out a lot. Okay. And so a lot of people, I'll tell you, if you're not sure what you want to do in life and you graduated from undergrad, okay, the best jobs to get initially are what's called origination roles, which means jobs where you're creating a product. Because if you create the product, then you can change careers later to selling the product, marketing the product, designing the product, that sort of thing. Okay. So I'll give you an example. So in Google, which is in Mountain View, just 40 minutes away from your half hour away, the best jobs there in the top of the food chain there are the engineers, right? They're rock stars there because they create the product. And those engineers can move on to do anything they want to later in life, right? Within Google or elsewhere, because they created the product, they understand how it works. They can move from engineering to sales or whatever there. And there's a saying in venture capital that you can teach finance to an engineer, but you cannot teach a finance person engineering. Okay. So origination. Now we talked about Google. Let me move on and talk about Wall Street. If you're an investment banker on Wall Street, you're very marketable because you're creating the product. You're creating the paperwork to take a company public or doing a takeover, that sort of thing. And if you hate it, you know how the product works, how to create it. You're like a financial engineer, I should say, on Wall Street. And if you've created the product, then you can move on to selling the product, trading the product, whatever it might be. The last thing I'll say about origination is consulting. McKinsey. Everybody wants to work at McKinsey. I got rejected from McKinsey, but I worked in consulting after undergrad at Accenture. And if you work in consulting, you architect the new business models for the companies that you're advising. And if you architect those, then it's easier for you to understand how business works later. And a lot of former consultants, especially McKinsey consultants, have become CEOs. Okay, so Lou Gerstner, a wonderful CEO who turned around IBM. You should read his book. It's called, I think, Fujimori-san. You asked me about books earlier. So Lou Gerstner's book is called something like Who Said Elephants Can't Dance? And it's about the historic turnaround from IBM. But a lot of people go into consulting out of undergrad because they're not sure what they want to do. And it's a great place to start a career because you're exposed to a lot of different business models and a lot of different companies and a lot of different industries. And you've been exposed to this array, this menu of different industries and companies, and you can decide what company it is you want to go to or industry. So anyway, hopefully that answered your question, Arctic Panda. Just take that little survey. And one other thing I'll say is that, and this is towards you, Arctic Panda. I love that name, by the way, and everyone else in this call. If you're not happy doing what you're doing, then I want you to do two things. Number one, I want you to network like crazy by reading my networking book for free. Right? It's 200 pages. You can go to harounventures.com and download it. Okay. And I teach you how to network to get meetings with anybody. So you can get your job or the next job, your passion or your customers, whatever. Do that. Then if you tried your best to network like crazy for like a year solid and it doesn't work, and it should work, by the way, but if it doesn't, then consider doing an MBA at a good school. Because if you do an MBA, and the reason I did the MBA, and I don't know how to network when I was younger, but if I knew how to network, I probably wouldn't have gone to business school. I learned. But the good thing about an MBA is you get to intern between first year and second year in the summer. You get to experiment by working in consulting for McKinsey or working in investment banking at Morgan Stanley or working in engineering at Facebook, whatever, or finance at Facebook. I don't know, M&A. And if you love that job during the summer, then there you go. That's your career. But if you hate that job during the summer between first year and second year, then when you graduate, join another industry. And if you hate that job, then network with people that went to your business school. Okay. And the reason you go to a decent business school is so you can network with them, because it's good for business relationships. And last thing I'll say, Arctic Panda, about McKinsey, it's something at Harvard Business School I want to share with you, which is interesting. I didn't go to Harvard. I got rejected. So at HBS, 2/3 of which is BS. I know that joke is old. I keep saying it. This is what old people do. It's called dad humor. But what happens is at Harvard Business School, every year, McKinsey management goes there and they spend $1 million wining and dining all the Harvard Business School students, even the ones that will never want to work at McKinsey. Why? Because they know longer term, they understand longer term that these people are likely going to be clients in McKinsey one day, or could be, because these are the future CEOs. So they're very long-term focused. Okay. All right. Next question I've got is from Dante Lezu. Dante, how are you, bud? All right. What are the most interesting companies you've seen in Brazil? Okay. I know a lot about this. And then I'll talk about your follow-up question there in a second. So when I worked at Pequot, big hedge fund, years ago, more than 10 years ago, what I did was I was actually investing a lot of money in Brazil. And the reason I invested in Brazil, and this is applicable to all countries around the world, is because what excited me about Brazil, and you can buy the ETF EWZ or EWZ if you're from Canada, if you want, which will give you exposure to Brazil. But what excited me about Brazil at the time is that Brazil was a growth market and reminded me of the United States in the 60s. Okay. And the reason Brazil reminded me of the US in the 60s is because back in the 1960s, infrastructure companies did really well. The airlines were new and there's a lot of growth. You know, the companies that made the roads, the bridges, not the walls, the roads and the bridges, that sort of thing, did exceptionally well. It was a growth economy. America was a growth economy in the 60s. America is now a really big economy. And just like big stocks, they can't grow as much just because they're big. It's a law of large numbers. But Brazil was hyper growth. And so I invested in real estate companies there. One of them's called Gafisa, which I think has an ADR, ticker GFA. I invested in Cirela. I invested in an amazing car rental place called Localiza, which was great. Just like Hertz and Avis used to be amazing growth companies years ago. So when you look at other economies, Dante, and for anybody else on this call, think about sectors that are growing quickly. Okay, a lot of people think I can't invest in these sleepy old companies in my country because they're mature. Well, you know what? In other countries, they're not mature, right? They're fabulous growth stocks. Like if you look at Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola used to be an amazing growth stock for years. McDonald's, Warren Buffett used to love it. Ticker MCD. Coke is ticker KO. But McDonald's was a great growth stock for years. Find a McDonald's in Brazil or other countries. You know, find the tech stock in other countries. Maybe it's like Mercado Libre, I don't know, in Brazil, that sort of thing. So Brazil, I invested in growth companies, and the same thing in the rest of Latin America. You know, when I went to Mexico, I met with the management of Cemex, and what I did was I would always judge these companies also based on their management team. So Dante, make sure you think the management team is amazing as well. Okay. Anyway. A little bit off topic there. It's amazing. And by the way, when it comes to Brazil or Canada or Australia, those three economies are similar, and I'll explain why. Because those three economies are very natural resources rich. And they do well when the price of commodities is extremely high, but they do poorly when the price of commodities is falling fast. And if you look at the Australian dollar, the Canadian dollar, or the Brazilian real, what happens usually is those currencies, when currencies work globally, right? It'll take me 10 seconds. When China is building a lot of stuff, they have to buy a lot of commodities. So if they want to buy iron ore from Australia, what they do is they have to exchange the Chinese yuan, the renminbi, into Australian dollars and then buy that iron ore. So what you saw there was an increase in demand for the Australian dollar. That's why the dollar goes up, Australian dollar. Same thing with the Canadian dollar, and the same thing with the Brazilian real. Okay. All right, next question I got here from Dante. And if you have questions, please ask questions here. When there's no more questions, we'll wrap up the call. But it looks like we got just a ton more callers here, people on the call. So if you're just joining us, please ask questions. Thanks. And then what we'll do is this. By the end of today, and from now on, we'll do this with the calls. By the end of the day, San Francisco time, if you go to the description field in the call, you can always click on a certain time and a certain question to get to the answer right away so I can save you time. Okay, so the next question is from Dante. From your perspective, do they have the chance to have the next Facebook or Google? Thanks. Okay, that's a great question. So, so funny, maybe subconsciously, that's why I mentioned Mercado Libre. So yeah, there's definitely that opportunity there. And I think it was Orkut. I can't remember the Brazilian Facebook equivalent there, but big American tech companies, just because they're successful in America or in other countries, doesn't mean they're going to be successful in other countries. Because it's hard to figure them out. Like Japan, for example, Japan's a tough market, man. For retail companies, the retail distribution is completely different in Japan. And so for Walmart to enter Japan, it's hard, man. It's tough. And the same thing goes with different economies. You know, for Walmart to enter, Germany and compete against Metro, it's kind of tough, right? So what happens is a lot of the times these big companies have to buy startups or buy successful companies in those markets. And for example, eBay was in Japan for a while. They just gave up, man. They couldn't compete with Yahoo Auctions. And eBay tried in Brazil, couldn't do it. So I think they invested a lot of money in Mercado Libre, which is Portuguese for free market, I think. Yeah, Mercado Libre. So that's what happens. But yeah, there's definitely that opportunity because the cultural differences are material in a lot of countries compared to tech companies from America or other tech companies, right? It's very different cross-culturally speaking. And a lot of times it's not easy to compete in other markets because you don't understand the cross-cultural differences. And that's why there's a lot of M&A in different markets. So anyway, a little bit of a long-winded answer, but that's what I would say about the next Facebook or Google in Brazil. Okay, so Gotham has a question. Got two of my best friends earlier in life were named Gotham. Okay, so Gotham is saying, what is a trade war and why is Trump targeting China? Okay. So everything, I'm going to make this a generic answer, but I think it'll make sense. Everything a politician does, everything, okay, and most politicians do everything for one reason, and that one reason is this: so they can get reelected. That's it. So that's what they're doing. Politicians do everything to get reelected. And the good thing about America, I'll say, is this, and Brazil too, I just found this out, there's term limits, which means that you can only be president or prime minister or political leader for a certain amount of time. 8 years in Brazil, I think, same thing, 8 years in America. And I wish that Canada had term limits too, because you could be prime minister forever, which means that you kind of appeal the middle class, which is cool. And you give a lot of social services away because the middle class is the big voting body. But what happens is when there's a term limit and you're in your last term or second of last terms, you try to have a legacy to help things out for the long run. Okay. So anyway, that's what I'll say about delicately here. And now you're asking, why is Trump targeting China? Well, everything leaders do is usually targeted at getting reelected. Okay, but a lot of it's a bluff. Okay. And remember what I said about Trump earlier, and I'm not saying what he's doing is good or bad or whatever, right? But if anybody knows how to get a deal done, this guy does. And even if his intentions seem wrong, sometimes it's a bluff. Okay, so what happens is, when he goes up for re-election, he could say, look at NAFTA. Not only did I rename it, but I made things better for us. And Justin Trudeau will say the same thing in Canada, whatever. So with China, it's a tough call, man, because America and China are attached at the hip. America relies on China for a lot of exports here. This thing was made by Foxconn and stuff in China. But China relies on America because America is 1/3 of the revenue of the world, 1/3 of gross domestic product of the world. And so China, it depends on us a lot. And you know what? China actually owns a lot of the debt that America has. The small mortgage on my house, which used to be really big in 2008 when I was scared and the world was going to end. It's owned by China because China buys a lot of the debt here in America. We're attached at the hip. Okay. Ouch. And so what happens is China realizes one big risk is the Chinese economy is too much reliance on one customer. You never want to have too much of your revenue from one customer. And so what China is trying to do is to get away from that by focusing on internal growth. And China wants the future growth of China to be focused inward, focused inward on the Chinese consumer, the Chinese middle class, right? A lot of people are moving to the middle class when they move to cities, and China has almost 200 cities with over 1 million people versus just 9 in the US. It's a lot, eh? And so China's trying to focus on developing that middle class internally. And so America is going to become a smaller market for China in the long run. Okay, in the very long run, just as they focus on the growing middle class internally. And the Chinese right now, the United States is the biggest economy in the world, but by 2040, I projected the data. It looks like China will pass America in terms of gross domestic product. And there's a lot of great innovation I'm starting to see now out of China. Now, China has 10 times more PhDs than America does. And I didn't see much innovation for years, but it's starting to happen now, right? Like this company blows me away. So this company here, it's called DJI, and they own the drone market, right? In the gimbal market, they're great as well. And I took a lot of great drone videos in places I don't know if I should have or not in Brazil, and I can't wait to show you. So watch my blog over the next couple of days, and I have these breathtaking videos based on this Chinese company, DJI, right? And when people vlog, right, like Casey Neistat and other people, when they buy, if you're going to buy a drone, it's not, what company should I buy the drone from? It's what DJI drone should I buy? So, anyway, a little off topic there, but China has started to have these incredible technology companies that are starting to expand overseas. It's really exciting to see. And I love it because the consumer wins. Competition is good for the consumer. But China is looking inward, okay, for consumer growth longer term. And United States, it looks like whatever it is looking a bit more inward. And remember what I said, what every politician, everything they do is based on who they think is going to reelect them. That's it, unless it's the second term. And I think more good stuff happens in second terms, regardless of who wins, whatever. Okay, a little bit off topic, but so Gotham, I hope that answers your question. But when it comes to trade wars, nobody wins, but sometimes in the long run, by bluffing, you get a little bit more back, right? Think of yourself, Gotham, negotiating with somebody when you want to start a job at a new company, right? You start with a somewhat ridiculous expectations, but not too ridiculous, right? But somewhat ridiculous expectations, so that instead of getting paid this amount, you get paid this amount. Compromise. Okay. All right. Next question. All right. Lay asks Dante, asked, what are the key sectors to invest in Brazil? So I would say in the long run, and I'm always a very long-term investor, and I love buying when everybody is freaking out. And so if everybody freaks out from the upcoming Brazil election in a couple days, which is a big deal, if everybody freaks out, I'll be buying. So I love sectors that are going to be more relevant, 20 years from now. And so I like infrastructure companies. Still, I like management team, that sort of thing. Anyway, but I'll only buy when there's blood in the streets. And when you buy your first house or your first apartment, this goes for everybody. When you do it, don't take on too much debt. But if you don't feel at least a bit uncomfortable, you're not buying a big enough piece of property, okay? You got to feel uncomfortable. And when it feels really uncomfortable for you to buy a stock, like really uncomfortable, right? Like it feels like you're catching a falling knife. That's when you do it. That's when you pull the trigger and buy because nobody else is. There's a lot of psychology and emotions in business. And Warren Buffett had this great quote. He said that the New York Stock Exchange is the only store in the world where consumers sell stuff when it goes on sale. Think about that. And he's dead right. He's dead right. And so if it feels uncomfortable for you to be buying a stock, that's good. Okay. As long as the fundamentals are not deteriorating. I love buying broken stocks and not broken companies. And if you buy investments, you invest in companies when other people are not, you'll do well. And it sounds so ridiculous and intuitive, I know, but think of it this way. Let's say everybody on the planet loves a certain company. We'll call it company X. And everybody owns that stock. Well, if everybody owns that stock and loves it, who's the incremental investor that's going to buy that stock to push it higher? There's not many. Okay. So anyway, just be a contrarian and watch your career and your portfolio take off. And I promise you, it'll feel uncomfortable. It'll feel uncomfortable. And that's what Warren Buffett did in 2008 in October. He bought a lot of Goldman Sachs. And a lot of people felt, like that was the worst time to buy, but that's when the market was in free fall, and he's done exceptionally well because of that. Exceptionally well. So always buy when other people, are freaking out. Thank you, Melvin. I appreciate that. All right, Willem. And Willem, every time I see you, I think of McLovin, okay, from Superbad. Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's right. Okay, so Willem just said that I used the McLovin trick to break the ice, and you know what, dude, you're totally right, and I'll show you. And I've shown this before. So that's from Superbad. I actually used this in Brazil. But when I was lining up to get into Udemy's building in Sao Paulo, they asked for my ID. And I showed the person at the front desk this, and she laughed a lot. And I was with somebody from Udemy as well, checking in, and she laughed. And I just met her, and it did break the ice, right? So, I just pocket dialed someone. Sorry. So yeah, other icebreakers. This is big. Whenever you whenever you meet somebody for the first time, don't talk business ever. Okay. Talk about other stuff you have in common. And the best way to do it for me is this, okay? So I love sports, and sports is great boardroom talk. And when you're sitting down with a potential customer or anybody for that matter, find out where they're from and talk about the sports team where they're from, okay? And for me, I'm being genuine. I'm never being disingenuous when it comes to baseball because I love the sport. I love everything about it. I loved it more when I was a kid because I didn't realize it was a business when I was a kid. But if I meet somebody from Baltimore, which is on the East Coast of the United States, I always mention my admiration for a guy named Cal Ripken, who's a great baseball player that played a gazillion games in a row. If I meet somebody from San Diego, I always talk about the San Diego Padres and Tony Gwynn. This guy was amazing, Tony Gwynn. If I meet anybody from, you meet somebody from Manchester, obviously, you know what you're going to talk about. And by the way, I bought my kid, Andrew, who loves soccer or football, I should say, for Christmas. I bought him one share of Manchester United, and it's on his wall now. And it serves two purposes. Number one, it's to help him understand business. And number two, to motivate him as well. Like, remember when we were kids, Willem, when we had on our wall we had cars or whatever stuff we want to buy. Why don't we do that anymore? Why don't we do that anymore? So anyway, for those of you that have a goal in life, I want you to get something physical to represent it. If you want to get an Academy Award, get a little fake one, whatever. If you want to buy a car one day, like the best damn car, like a McLaren, Mercedes, which I don't have, but I'd love to have, buy a model of it, put it up on your shelf. I don't care how old you are. That sort of thing. Go to successories.com and buy little motivational posters. I believe in that stuff. I've always had accessory posters or little framed pictures on my desk just to motivate me. Okay. Anyway, a little bit off topic, Willem, but yeah, for icebreakers, I would say just talk about sports. I mean, you could talk about quotes as well. I think quotes work better when you're giving a presentation. And always have a lot of quotes handy just in case there's a disruption in your presentation. Like say that your computer freezes and you have to restart it, right? Which can be a disaster. I always bring 2 laptops to my presentations. But what you do is you can just throw out a quote, right? Like my favorite quote ever, and I did this actually in Brazil when I presented. God, I miss Brazil already. Great coffee. I thought it was only Colombia had great coffee, but Brazil, amazing coffee too. But when I was in Brazil, there's one point I was walking around the stage and I was like, uh-oh. And so I talked about my favorite quote in the world, which is this: the 2 most important days in your life are number 1, the day you're born, and number 2, the day you find out why. That's a great quote from, oh my God, dude, I'm throwing I am mentally lost here. Mark Twain. That happens when you get older, man. I was in the shower this morning. I was like, did I wash my hair yet? Couldn't remember. Anyway, the older I get, the better I was. Yes, I know I use that joke a lot. But anyway, that's what I would do. Quotes work exceptionally well if you're presenting. All right. Enter your questions here, please. When I see there's no more questions, what we'll do is we will wrap up the call. A lot of new people joined, so please let me know if you have questions here. This is fun. All right. Next. Oh, you're welcome, Cassandra. Tiger Glory, of course. Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate it. From Brazil. I love Brazil. Great country. Okay. So Dante, meaning Lay, has a follow-up. And again, answer your questions here, please. In terms of people and corporate cultures, do you think multicultural companies have more advantages than monocultural companies? Wow, that's a great question. And speaking of multicultural, I gotta say, Brazil, man, it reminded me a lot of Toronto, of Toronto, where I'm from. Just the beautiful diversity. I loved it. It was incredible. It was just this beautiful cultural mosaic. It was fantastic. And that transcends to great international restaurants as well. I had the best Italian food I've ever had, probably in Brazil. I loved it. Anyway, so yeah, I think that companies that are very multicultural are more successful because they understand the cross-cultural differences when it comes to different markets. Right. And that's why a lot of big companies will buy startups or companies in other countries because they just can't figure it out. They'd rather buy versus build. But I think if you focus on diversity within your company, you benefit a lot. You benefit a lot. And I'm going to share with you a very tragic quote from one of my former students. So Brenda, who is one of my best students ever at San Francisco State, she started this charity called Providing Opportunities for Women, POW. And what she's trying to do is to provide, obviously, more career avenues for women and help make the world a better place by doing that. But when Brenda presented on her charitable model, I mean, I had shivers just thinking about it now. She said something which blew me away, a quote, which is this. She said that there's more CEOs in the United States named John than there are women CEOs. And that's tragic. It's ridiculous. And so, things are changing. Thank God Saudi Arabia is getting a little bit better. The rest of the world a little bit better. And of course, you see a lot of these legal cases now No, I think that diversity is a beautiful thing. Not only is it the right thing to do, but think about who your customers are longer term. Your customers are the whole world. And so you should be representative of the whole world in your company as you grow it. In the past, before the internet was created, your customers were just domestic, right? And if you were Coca-Cola, for example, and you started selling to Europe, you probably started hiring more Europeans, staying with or Americans there. It's different now, though, man. It's different because your whole customer base and any startup is the entire planet, and so you have to think global, even though you might just be local. You have to, and you have to hire people that represent your customer base. It's just the right thing to do as well. The right thing to do. So anyway, that's what I think. I think that thinking global is a better way to run your company. It's just the ethical thing to do. Yeah. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on it. And it's really hard to understand cross-cultural differences too. It's so complicated. I mean, I've tried. Like I used to work in Japan. I went there every now and then with when I worked at Goldman Sachs. I did Japanese equities. I took this Berlitz course on how to speak Japanese and learn the cross-cultural differences in Japan. But that wasn't enough. Like there's so many nuances. And if your entire audience, if your entire customer base is the world, you can't understand the cross-cultural differences in every country. It's impossible. That's why you have to be, a very diverse culture in your company. Okay, so hopefully that answered your question there. Okay, great. So let's see here. Next, I got a question from Raphael. And Raphael, I met a lot of people actually at the event in Sao Paulo at the Startse event named Raphael. Actually, half the people I met in one circle were from Raphael, and I talked about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And anyway, sorry. All right, so here we go. Raphael says, "How do you make a significant difference with competition?" Okay, customer service. So I really believe that a company is only as good as its customer service. Think about Amazon. Amazon has incredible customer service. A company is only as good as its customer service. Service your customers better than your competition ever will. Have weekly webcasts, do a daily vlog. I don't know who I'm talking about there, but anyway, you get the idea. But I do it because I love it, right? And make sure that your employees and you, Raphael, and your management team are so passionate about what you're doing, right? So think about comparing and contrasting Virgin America or Virgin Atlantic to other airlines. And for those of you that have ever flown in one of Richard Branson's companies, Richard Branson, CEO, founder of Virgin. So you'll know just how passionate the employees are at Virgin versus the competition. Okay, so I would say customer service is probably the biggest one. Probably the biggest one. And a lot of people try to cut costs to be the lowest cost provider, and they'll cut into muscle instead of into fat. Not that I have any muscle. By cutting into customer service. But what happens is customers dislike you. It's like Comcast in America. It's really, really bad customer service. So I think you can charge a higher pricing point if you have better customer service too. Look what Amazon's doing. They're starting to raise prices. Nobody cares because they have great customer service. So Raphael, hopefully that answered your question. If it didn't, please answer a follow-up here. All right, next up, got a question. And Kwong, if I mispronounced your name, I'm so sorry. Kwong has a just let me know if I did, please. Has a question here. True, when family and friends involved with your money, I've been in that situation. It's like you always have to leverage your investment decisions based on your family opinion. I know it's hard. I never lie, but I lied once to my parents. And my parents invested in my hedge fund And what happened was family members would ask, how's our investment doing at Thanksgiving, whatever. It felt really uncomfortable. And so what I did was I lied to my parents, which is awful. Don't do this. But I did it. But I'm fully transparent. Here's what I did. It was December 2010 or January 2011. And my hedge fund just had a really good year. And it was so stressful for me, having my parents get monthly statements. So what I did was I told my parents, I said, we're closing our offshore account. And unfortunately, because you're in Canada, I can no longer have you as investors. I'm so sorry, but I have to have you redeem. And it was after a good year, thank God. But that was a lie. Yeah. So, just do your best not to get family or friends to invest in your companies. Yeah. Okay. And by the way, if a friend of yours asks you to invest in their company, say no, unless it's money you'll know you'll never see again. But I also want you to ask yourself this question if they ask you to invest in their company. I want you to think, why am I so lucky to be given this opportunity? Why am I so lucky to be given this opportunity? I don't want you to see all my garbage on the floor there. And the reason that you're probably given this opportunity to invest in their company is because nobody else will. Just be careful. Be careful. You know what I mean? Okay, so next question. Got another one here from Raphael. You ask great questions, dude. Thank you. Would I please give some advice about the best way to handle a profitless business? Okay, business is not making money. Okay, so a couple ways. Number one, when you're raising money to start a company, of course, the reason you're raising money is because your business is not profitable yet. You have to make sure that your investors in your company understand that your business is not going to be profitable for a while. Okay, don't do a deal with the devil, so to speak, by taking money from somebody that expects you to be profitable sooner than you will be. Make sure that your expectations are aligned. Otherwise, lawsuits could occur and you could get pushed out of your company if your investor teams up with other investors and board members. Okay, so that's what I would say. Just be very upfront at first. Okay, with all of your investors, make sure they understand before they invest that your company is not going to be profitable for a while. Now, let me pivot. And when I answer questions, I try to make it generic enough so it's applicable to everybody. Let's say you're running a company right now and you're not profitable, but you were profitable before, but you're not profitable now. Then in order to keep going, if you don't have any money left in your company, you might have to sell part of your company to another investor. And sell it from your personal position. Say that you own 80% of the company and 20% is owned by investors. And you're not profitable now. And you don't want to compromise your standard of living by, dipping into your pockets and not being able to pay for your kids' school or your house or your car and stuff. Then of the 80% you currently own, go to the 20% owned by other investors. And if you like and trust them, try to sell part of your 80% to them. Okay. And be very honest and open and say why. Okay. That's what I would do first of all. If that doesn't work, then go to new investors. And you can read my networking book on my website. Find new investors to invest. Don't get a bank loan ever. Okay. Ever. Because what happens is, again, if you miss one payment, then your DOA, debt on arrival, then the banks will take everything from you. Okay. That's what I would recommend. And the last thing I'll say about that, Raphael, is this. When you start a company, I want you to give it 2 years. And after 2 years, I want you to think yourself this. If I knew about the problems I'm facing now with my company 2 years ago, would I have still started this company? If the answer is no, then shut it down and move on. Okay. And it sucks. And it's happened to me before. And I had to go back working for somebody else, which I hated. I was so depressed because once you've had freedom and it's taken away, then it's almost like you never wanted to have had freedom in the first place. It's kind of like If you have a lot of money and you lose it, you're better off never having had it before. It just feels awful. And Raphael, and I'm not implying anything with you, but if it's been 2 years, you start your own company, and it's still not working, then just go work for somebody else for a little while. It sucks. I was so depressed when I did that, but I was more motivated than ever. And failure is a badge of honor, and it motivates you to do even better. And eventually I launched another company and did well, and I'm fine now. But anyway, the 2-year test is big. And then when I have, Raphael, when my next course comes out, the business plan one, I'll walk you through exactly about your business plan from my humble perspective. Okay. And that goes for everybody. Don't start a company, please, unless you write a thorough business plan first. It's a cliche and it's cheesy, but if you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. Okay. And I'll help you with that. And that's the purpose of these calls as well, to help you plan. Okay. So, Raphael, if I didn't answer your question properly, please let me know. Okay. And so let's do a quick, now we're good in time. We're fine. Okay. So next question I've got is from Dan. Hey, Dan, to piggyback on Haroun's question, how do new founders of new startups who are not generating revenue make money? I'm curious about how they negotiate a salary for themselves after receiving the funding. Okay, that's totally fair. So what happens is when you want somebody to invest in your company, you'll meet with them, you'll discuss the business model, and then once you agree upon stuff like how much money they're going to invest, then what you do is you give them what's called a term sheet. Okay. And a term sheet is usually a 10 or 11 or 12 page document, which is not legally binding. And once they agree to the terms in that term sheet, including your salary, then you both give that term sheet to your lawyer and they give it to their lawyer. And those lawyers talk and create a lot more complicated legal stuff that we all sign later. Okay. So make sure it's in your term sheet. And by the way, for anybody that wants to understand how a term sheet works and how to make your own term sheet, because that's how venture capitalists invest in companies. There's a term sheet that both parties sign. I want you to go to a web address, wsgr.com, or actually do a search on Google for Wilson Sonsini term sheet. And what happens is if you go to Wilson Sonsini term sheet, you'll see that there's a 47-step process that will actually help you to write a term sheet. And after those 47 steps, what happens is you actually get a term sheet that's created in Microsoft Word or PDF format. Okay. And so please do that. And I want to see if I can get it here. Yeah, wsgr.com, or just go to Google and search WSGR or Wilson Sonsini term sheet. Yeah, that's exactly it. And then create a term sheet that way. Okay. And so in terms of how much to pay yourself, so investors, they're logical, hopefully. They'll understand that you need to make a salary. So pay yourself as much as, or maybe a little bit less than what people make in that position at big profitable companies, okay, for your base salary. I want you to pay yourself, okay? I don't want you to, if you're stressed out and you can't make rent, you're not going to be successful, okay? And I don't want you to put your family at risk. I don't want you to jeopardize, I don't want you to jeopardize the wonderful standard of living that your family has. So make sure you pay yourself enough. If you make $100,000 when working at a big company, then make sure you make $100,000 or a little bit less in working for yourself. Okay. So anyway, that's what I recommend. All right, let's see what's next. All right, if you have questions, please enter them in now. All right, Dan's got another question here. And again, if you have questions, answer them now. When there's no more questions, I'll wrap it up. And I'm happy to answer questions all day long forever. This is fun. Okay. So Dan is saying, also, some seem to live really large pre-revenue. Where's the money coming from? Okay. Yeah, okay. I can't imagine that VCs are going to be funding a lavish lifestyle. Yeah, that's totally fair. Totally fair. board meetings occur every 3 months, and you get a board seat if you invest a lot of money in a company. And every 3 months, what happens in these board meetings is the CEO starts by saying, we had another great quarter, because even if they didn't, just kidding, sort of. And then the CFO comes on and talks about expenses. And this is when the board members usually say, hey, wait a second. Why are expenses in this area increasing a lot? Why is this? And board members are kind of like the Senate. It's like a sober second look, and they will keep the management team in check. And a lot of people that invest in companies hate it when they walk into that company and see a beautiful office. If they see a beautiful office, it means that that management team is wasting money if they're not making a lot of money. And I'll give you a great example, which is true to this day, and you can Google this. Jeff Bezos, the brilliant founder of Amazon, when he started the company back in 96 or whenever it was, or 95, when he left D.E. Shaw, he actually had doors, like real doors, like old doors that aren't being used anymore, as tables. And to this day, he still has that. Okay. So it's the mentality of living in fear for a company, living like it's a startup. Always, always, always. So that's what I would say. If companies are spending too much money on salaries for themselves, usually what happens is shareholders get upset, board members get upset, and board members make sure that they don't do that. Okay, and that's why boards exist, because people on boards have a fiduciary duty to their investors, like all the investors in my venture capital fund or whatever it might be. They have a fiscal responsibility and a fiduciary duty to make sure that management is not doing crazy things like paying themselves too much money. So anyway, hopefully that answers that question. And that's what board members do. They keep management teams in check. Okay, so all right. No, you're right, Dan. You're right about that. Okay, good. So Raphael has another question here. 3. How do you manage to run a startup, let's say a tech one, with a low budget? Okay. What you do, okay, there's a whole mentality here in the Bay Area called, which Wrigley, who's my business partner, told me about. It's called Lean Startup. So read that book or listen to the audiobook, The Lean Startup, and run your company extremely lean, like my company. Like I'm very lean, very lean. And I don't have that many expenses, right? Or some of them, a little bit too much in certain areas, whatever. But just run your company extremely lean. You know, the Japanese Japanese and Edward Deming in the 60s, 70s, early 80s pioneered something called just-in-time management, JIT, which means that you don't buy stuff for your company until the last second you need it. Okay. And a lot of books that you buy from Amazon and a lot of like my books, for example, if you've ever bought a book from me, just look on the last page and you'll see when that book was printed, when it was born, its birthday. What happens is when you buy most books from Amazon now, they haven't been printed yet. Isn't that amazing? You get them a day and a half later. They get printed on the spot and sent to you. So I want you to think about running your company the same way. I want you to be intellectually honest and fiscally responsible about your budget, and don't spend anything until you absolutely need it. Okay. Rent things if you have to. That's what I would say. That's what I would say. Just be very, very lean and buy things at the last second, and outsource everything, right? Like my company, we've done well, but the only person I work with really is Wrigley. I outsource everything else. Why? So that I can focus on my core competency. The way I look at it is this: every second that I spend not helping you, the customer, is a waste of time. So anyway, that's how I think about it. Hopefully I'm helping. Okay, great. Let's see. Raphael, as a follow-up, I'm from the area, but I'm not one of those people who's capable of doing everything. So I guess it's good to bring people on board, but you don't have enough money to pay them. Okay. Raphael, great question. In that case, just outsource it. Okay. Outsource everything. Because when you start a company, I have to turn it this way. I'm not a workaholic. I love what I do. When you start a company, just focus on on what you do best. A lot of people, when they start companies, and for anybody on this call that wants to start a company now, if you're working for somebody else and you hate it because they underpay you, and you know what I mean, they pay you the minimum amount every year just to keep you there. Okay, just barely. I don't know how they do it, but whatever it is you do, your job function now, when you start your own company, I only want you to focus on that job function. I don't want you to be distracted by accounting. I don't want you to be distracted by back office stuff. I want you to outsource all that stuff. Talk to friends that have started companies and ask them, how do you do it? Who do you outsource your accounting to? Because I don't want to waste my time on that stuff, core competency, and grow my company right now as much as I can. Outsource everything you can. And the most distracting thing, I think, for a lot of founders, and a lot of people work at these amazing tech companies like Cisco and whatever, Dell and EMC, and they leave to start their own companies because they're good engineers or whatever it is. And a lot of them fail because they don't anticipate how much time it takes to raise money. Every year, startups go out and raise money. It's a ridiculous waste of time. And so I always say, raise as much money as you can when you can, so you can just focus on everything else in your company. And I don't want you to ever put your family at risk. Okay. I want you to start your own companies like Tiger or Cassandra. I don't know if you're still on the call, but that amazing business model of energy credits that your dad had, that thought process, I want you to start that company. Okay. I want you to start it, but I want you to raise money from other people to pay for it. Okay. Okay. And Willem, if you want to make fake ID like McLovin, I want you to get other people to pay for it. Just kidding. Sorry. Okay. All right. Next question is from Raphael. Again, if you have questions, answer them here, please. Raphael's question is, you're talking about South America. What area would you make an investment? Oh, well, I don't look at countries as much. I usually look at companies. But if there are certain, like, I won't invest in Venezuela, for example, only because I don't really understand the political situation longer term. If Venezuela became more capitalist, or there's a hope of that, then I'd be there in a heartbeat. But I like to invest in countries with, like stable, democratic, checks in place. And then what I do is I focus on companies. So I've done a lot of investing in Mexico. It's a wonderful economy. I've done a lot of investing in Brazil. I've even invested in mines in Colombia, even though it's not really an investor-friendly country. So I like to usually look at companies rather than just economies. And if I do look at economies and I want to get access to invest in an economy, but I don't want to do the work looking at individual companies, I'll invest in ETFs, which for those of you who are not familiar with, the ETFs are exchange traded funds. And it's just like a stock ticker that represents a country or an industry. So EWZ, ticker EWZ, or ticker EWZ if you're from Canada, that's how to invest in Brazil. EWC is investing in Canada, that sort of thing. So hopefully that answers your question. But Raphael, if the upcoming election in Brazil causes market crashes, I'll probably be buying. Okay. Okay, let's see. Robin's got it. Oh, hey, Robin, how are you? First question from Robin this week. Robin always asks great questions too. Hi, Chris. Thanks for what you're doing. My pleasure. Thanks for being a part of this. This is fun. And if you're successful, and this goes to everybody, if you're successful launching your company and you're happier because of it, and if you're making the world a better place because of it as well, then I feel like that's our success. Like I want to be part of this journey we go through together. And so all of you, I want you to start your own company. Please start your own companies now. And then every week, just ask me about it, and let's turn that business model into a life-changing, world-changing one as well. And I want nothing from it except for the happiness knowing that I've helped you on your journey. And if you're worried about your boss or people that know you seeing you asking questions here, then just log in with a different name. Okay. And Tiger, if you're doing it, I'll always know you as Cassandra anyway. Okay, so Robin's got a question. Hi, Chris. Thank you. Thank you. How can I find out if a person I want to hire or work with is actually passionate about what we're doing? Okay, that's great. And you follow up, you're saying, what's the best way to interview them? I over interview. Okay. I hire very slowly and I fire if I have to quickly. And when you fire, it's so hard. And I'll explain how to fire somebody soon. It's terrible the first time you do it, but after the first time it gets easier, but it still sucks. So I take a lot of time hiring people. Okay. It's like a long-term dating process or whatever it is before you get married, whatever. But I interview people. And when I worked at Goldman Sachs, we would interview people, and I was interviewed like 40 times before I got hired. And I'll tell you that Goldman Sachs does not hire the smartest people. They hire people that get along. Okay. Because one jerk or one asshole, whatever, in one group destroys productivity of a company. Okay. One bad apple, they say in America, just spoils a whole darn bunch. One rotting apple rots all the others. And so spend a lot of time getting to know people before you hire them. Okay. And on my teams, and when I've managed teams in the past, I make sure that everybody on my team, I don't care how many people on my team, meets with that person we're interviewing 3 times each. Once in the office, once at a lunch, or once at a coffee event or a dinner, whatever it is, 3 times each. And you got to be totally sure that this person is the right person. And if everybody in your team interviews them 3 times each in different settings, you'll know if you hire the right person or not. And I usually, like, I'm getting older, whatever now, and I've made a lot of mistakes and done okay as well in other situations, but I can kind of tell. It's kind of like, I'm not an arrogant guy, but I'm a good judge of character. And that's probably come from years of failure and some successes. I usually know, right, within 30 seconds, usually know pretty quickly. I can size somebody up. But just in case, you have to actually, meet with each person 3 times in different settings as well. Okay. And you can even do 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 interviews, and you put them under pressure. And I hate to say this, but I will. You got to be a little bit abrasive, a little bit pushy in some situations as well, kind of acting just to see how they'll react. I'm not saying too rude, but just a little bit pushy when you're interviewing them in 1 or 2 situations. Because if they react really negatively to you, they'll do it to a client or potential customer, I promise you. So that's what I recommend. That's what I recommend. And find out if they light up, if they're passionate about what they're doing. And you'll know after 3 interviews per person on your team if they're passionate about this industry or not. Okay. And make sure they love it. And I don't hire people that, I don't believe in just looking at the university you went to. It's bullshit. Sorry for swearing. But if you look at actually Wrigley, who's a guy I work with, sent me an amazing article. It's really interesting from CNBC, which is this. 13 of the biggest American companies now do not require you to have a degree anymore. You don't need to have a degree to get a job at a great company. Google doesn't require a degree. Neither does Apple. Neither does Bank of America. Neither does IBM, which is like the oldest company ever. So I don't just hire people based on degrees. I don't give a damn. If somebody reminds me they went to Harvard or Stanford, I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. I want somebody that's passionate about what they do. That's what I want. And my favorite type of students or people to hire are people that are poor, smart, and hungry. Maybe they've had a bad set of cards in life, whatever it is, but they're hungry. And I just like that. I don't like entitlement. Anyway, I'm rambling a bit here, but just interview them 3 times each, Robin. And that's what I promise you is the best way to find out if you're hiring the right person or not. And if I didn't answer your question correctly, Robin, please let me know. But you know what? Before I go on, Cassandra, I love your question. I'll get you in a second. Tiger Glory. I want to talk about firing. It's really uncomfortable. Okay. And God, I hate to do this, but I'm going to. First of all, if I fire somebody, it's my fault, right? I'm the failure for hiring this person anyway. Okay. And sometimes when you work in big companies and the economy goes into a downtrend, your boss will ask you to fire somebody in your team or let them go, whatever. right? It's going to happen. I promise. I promise. And by the way, for those of you that don't want to get fired, which is everybody, here's how you don't get fired. Okay. Every 3 months, sit down with your boss and ask her or him, how am I doing? How am I doing? What do I need to do to get to the next level? And they'll tell you, they'll give you feedback on the spot. And this way, if you're proactive, like every battle is won before it's been fought, you can find out if you're doing things the wrong way and just stay on the right path. Every 3 months, how am I doing? How am I doing? That sort of thing. Okay, now how to fire someone. Oh, getting depressed even talking about it. Okay, so the first time you do it, it's going to be really, really hard. I'm going to explain. I had the first person go. I called friends of mine whose parents or fathers, whatever, worked and headed up human resources at the largest companies in the world. I researched the crap out of it. And here's how you do it. You do it on a Monday usually, right? There's nothing, why be a jerk and do it on a Friday and ruin their weekend? Okay, so do it on a Monday. Maybe Monday morning, whatever. And you sit down with them. And if you're worried that they're going to be a jerk, have a security officer close by, okay? Just to protect yourself. I've seen crazy things in my career. But most of the time when people get let go, they know what's happening. Okay. And it happened to me too. I got let go. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I remember at the time thinking, God, why is this happening? This is terrible, blah, blah. It was the best thing because, and you're helping this person if you let them go sometimes because they're not passionate about what they're doing and you're pushing them towards finding their real passion and purpose in life. Okay. And Madonna got fired by Dunkin' Donuts. Robert Redford got fired by an oil company. Michael Bloomberg got fired from Merrill Lynch. He's a billionaire mayor dude in New York, whatever. But you sit down with them. And what you do is this. Have somebody else present just in case if you want. Okay. You say this. You start off by giving a sincere compliment. I'll call this person John. John, I have to say that you've been the quintessential team player and you've done a really, really good job with product X. Then after you compliment, then you list the reasons why they're being let go. However, unfortunately, due to the fact that you did Y or whatever it is, we have to let you go. Then you pause and you don't say anything. Okay, you pause, and that pause sometimes feels like years. Right, it's really uncomfortable. You pause and you wait for them to say something. Okay. You wait. And then after they make their statement, what you do is, and usually I remember when it happened to me, I was like, oh my God, I have a family. I'm here on a work visa, whatever. Then they usually, say whatever. I forgot one more thing. You say what the severance is as well. Okay. You're giving them. And then when they ask questions, if you can't answer them, say, well, I'll have somebody from human resources reach out to you. Okay. And then what happens is you shake hands and whatever it is. Now, I did something really different when I was let go. Okay. I knew it wasn't my boss's decision. It was just an economic downturn and whatever. And I couldn't understand. I made money for the company. I understand it, but I did this. Okay. I gave my boss a big hug. Okay. And I squeezed the shit out of him. I broke his ribs. No, I'm just kidding. No, I did give him a hug because I knew it was out of his control. And you got to be careful because what happens is before you ever get hired again anyway, somebody's going to call that person that you worked for as a reference. Okay. So just be careful. Just be careful. Anyway, so that's that. All right. So Cassandra, hey, and if you have questions, enter them here, please. Cassandra has a question. If you want to build a sports dome with, I love it. This is what I want, people. I want you to ask specific questions about companies you're starting or think of starting or dreaming about starting. And I want to humbly be a part of your success. I don't want anything in return, but just to help. Okay, Cassandra has a question. If you want to build a sports dome with 6 tennis courts, a restaurant overseeing the courts, etc., how do you find out who are the investors you should talk to? $10 million. Okay. Oh my God. And you're saying, please finish the business plan course. You bet I will. Okay. And I'll think about you too when I'm writing this part of the course or of the course. It's getting there. Okay. All right. So first of all, why just one dome with 6 tennis courts? Why not multiple domes with 20? Why not multiple with 20 tennis courts in every big city on the planet? Okay, I want to push you there, Cassandra, when I read your business plan, when you ask me more questions. Okay. So number one, you have to write a complete business plan. Okay, including a really powerful executive summary, a sizing of the market, who your customer is going to be, everything about it. Okay, and this course that I'm creating, sorry, that bought me time to think of the answer. For this course I'm creating, we'll ask you every question you should possibly think about before starting it, so that every battle is won before it's been fought. When you meet with your investors, Cassandra, you will know exactly what questions are going to ask, and I will arm you with the necessary tools so you have every appendix ready. So when they ask you those questions in the meetings, you can bring out that appendix to make you look like a freaking rock star, so that they will fund your company. Okay, so after you create that business plan, Cassandra, and if I'm giving you that course for free, obviously, but after you create that business plan, then what you're going to do is you're going to make sure you use the methodologies I explain in my networking book. Go to harounventures.com, read the networking book cover to cover. Get those informational meetings with people that have something in common with you, whatever it might be. Maybe they also grew up in Florida, or have a love for environmental credits, for energy trading, which we talked about or we emailed about before offline, I think. Then get those informational meetings, all right, and get those meetings with really, really wealthy people with something in common with you by reading my networking book. Okay. Don't approach big venture capital firms early on ever, because it's a waste of your time. Because what happens is this: a lot of venture capital firms and big endowments and pension funds will take meetings with you, right? And when I was launching my first hedge fund and venture firm, I got a meeting with Caisse Depot in Montreal, Canada. Okay. It's a huge pension fund, massive, good company. And it's supposed to be a half-hour meeting. And I flew up to Montreal and I stayed in the cheapest hotel I could find. And I met with them, and it wasn't a half hour; it was about 2 hours of the meeting. I was like, "Oh my god, this is the best ever!" And the guy Jean-Francois, who I met with, good dude, he said, "Thank you very much for your time, Chris. We'll keep your business on our radar screen, and maybe we'll invest in 3 or 4 years." I know, right? Waste of my time and their time. But what happens is they take the meeting with you because every single person that works at these big companies has to have a checkbox of meeting with about 700 startups every year. That's 2 per day. So you become a checkbox. So only meet, Cassandra, with people that are the decision makers, be it a CEO. And we talked about earlier how to get a meeting with any CEO in the world, and only meet with high net worth investors, because the sales cycle is much shorter if you go to the person that pulls the trigger. So anyway, but Cassandra, I can't wait to talk more about your business model. But what I would do also, you're thinking about building a sports complex with 6 tennis courts, a restaurant overseeing the courts, etc. I want you to do a search, Cassandra, on Bo Jackson. Okay, he was this, oh my God, like the best athlete ever. I remember watching him as a kid. He walked on the wall once sideways to catch a ball during a baseball game. But do a search on him, because Bo Jackson started a similar business model to yours. And obviously he leveraged his name. That's how he was able to raise money, right? But it's very similar. Check it out. It's pretty cool. But what he did was because of his past experience, people thought he would be successful because he was an athlete. He got it. So what I want you to do is I want you to really be careful to make sure that your investors know that you know what you're doing when it comes to sports facilities, restaurants, tennis courts, domes, whatever it might be. Make sure that you have insurance because you live in Florida, weather, you know what I'm talking about, that sort of thing. And if you don't have the necessary skills, Cassandra, for that, then what you need to do is you need to set up a board of advisors. Okay. And watch the vlog I gave a couple of days ago on boards. Okay. It'll explain how it works. And I want you to get advisors on your board that have experience in sports, right? There's a lot of great retired athletes in the state of Florida for tax reasons, right? And Tony Robbins just moved from California to Florida for tax reasons too. Hopefully you can meet him there. Good guy. But get these people on your board that have something that you don't have, right? Maybe it's an athlete that's played in domes. I don't know. Maybe it's an investor that has invested in real estate for years. Maybe somebody else on your board is somebody that owns a couple of restaurants in Miami or Fort Lauderdale or wherever it is in Florida or in, I think, Tampa, that sort of thing. So make sure to understand the gaps in your knowledge so that, and this goes for everybody in this call too, so that the board people that you meet with to put on your board, okay, they have skills that you don't have that will give confidence to other investors, okay, that you can kind of bridge that gap. And they don't have to be board members. They can be board advisors, which is not a legal thing and you don't have to pay them, but ask them to be on your board and they will say yes. I promise you, just use the method I explained, but guarantee it'll work. I promise you. And if you look at guys like Mark Zuckerberg, when he started his company, he didn't have experience, right? And obviously he did a great thing at Facebook by starting that website so we can get dates with people, whatever, at Harvard. But he had on his board people that knew how to build a company, which gave other investors a lot of confidence in Facebook. And so on his board was a guy named Peter Thiel, right? And Peter Thiel was the co-founder of PayPal. Also, Sean Parker, who started Napster, so he understood, which is an online music thing that everyone used to rip off music in the 90s. Okay, so he understood how to scale a business, and Justin Timberlake was on his. No, that was just from the movie, sorry, but you know what I mean. These were people on his board that really knew what they were doing, and it gave investors confidence. And so, Cassandra, thank you for mentioning this. I'm excited now, and I'm going to think offline about this too, how to help you. And every week, Cassandra, on this call from now on, you just let the cat out of the bag, Tiger. I'm going to ask you, how's the sports business doing? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And please continue to ask me questions, Cassandra, on this weekly call forever about the sports complex. Okay, and I'm going to keep asking you about it as well until it becomes a reality, until it happens. Okay. So anyway, that was a kind of a long-winded answer. I got really excited there. Awesome. And for those of you also want to start a business, ask me here, please. I've worked in consulting. I've worked on Wall Street. I've invested in a lot of companies. I want to humbly help you. I want to help you achieve your goals in life. Okay. All right. Wow. I talk a lot, eh? All right. So another question from Haroun, which rhymes with Haroun. How are you, bud? What finance role would you recommend? Okay. What finance role would you recommend after MBA to understand better the financial services industry in terms of developing skills and flexibility? Okay. The best finance role that you can have if you want to start your career in finance and then you're not sure where to go from there is investment banking. And I explained that earlier in the course, and I talked about origination. But investment bankers create the product. They're like engineers. Okay? They create the documents for the IPO, initial public offering, when the stock first goes public. If you create the product, whether you're in finance or whatever industry it is, then it's easier for you to find another job later, selling the product, trading the product, investing in the product, whatever. Start by making the product if you're not sure, okay? Just like in technology, a lot of the best executives in the tech sector are former engineers. They've made the product, right? A lot of people look at Stanford Business School, for example. And I was over at Kleiner Perkins recently, and I talked to a Stanford MBA graduate, and I was telling him and talking to him about how a lot of people go to Stanford, a lot of venture capital firms, to try to see what companies to invest in. And he put me on the spot. Right? He said, Chris, give me one tech company that has ever been really successful, founded by a Stanford MBA graduate. And I couldn't. You know why? All the great tech companies founded out of Stanford are from the computer science or engineering department. Start out in investment banking if you're not sure what to do. Okay, and you can, Haroun, you can network a lot using the skills mentioned in my book, whatever. And you know where to get my book for free, and just do that. Yeah, but if you do it, Haroun, just know that the hours are horrific. It sucks, right? It's really, really hard on you. Do it before you're married, before you have kids, and do it for a couple of years only. and then leave. A lot of former investment bankers do wonderful things, but it might be kind of miserable. And a lot of my students, when I used to teach in different business schools here at nights, they all want to be investment bankers, every single one of them. And I was like that too when I was a student at McGill in my drinking fun days. But what happens, everyone wants to be an investment banker, but they don't know why. They don't know why. Use it as a stepping stone only. And that goes for everybody on this call. If you work for somebody else, they're a stepping stone for you, okay? A stepping stone to something better, okay? And that goes for Wrigley, who works with me. He's family, and I'll work with him forever. But if I could ever help him to find something better than this company, then hell yeah, I'll be with him. Wrigley, don't leave. Okay. All right. So, all right. Next question I've got is from Vincent. This is a new question. Hey, Vincent, how are you? I don't think I've met with you before here on the call. Hi, Professor Chris. Since we're talking about growth markets, what do you think about the startup ecosystem in Indonesia? I don't know much about the ecosystem there. I know I have looked at rubber tree investments in Indonesia in the past. For those of you that are not familiar with that, rubber actually comes out of trees. I didn't know that. But anyway, I looked at that when I used to invest in tire companies like the Titan Tire Company in Peoria, Illinois, and Caterpillar and that sort of thing. So I don't know much about that. But what I will say is aside from wonderful natural resources that you have in that beautiful country of yours, I would say it doesn't matter where you're located in the world anymore, because the barriers to entry have been blurred because of the internet. You can start a company from anywhere, right? A kid in a garage in any country can get online and start a company now, because the cost to start a company is almost free now. So I think you can compete with anybody from Silicon Valley. Or from anybody that works in England or went to Oxford, Cambridge, or whatever it may be. It doesn't matter where you are anymore. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just go online and make it happen. And if I can humbly help you reach your dreams, Vincent, on this weekly call, which is going to be at 8 a.m. every Thursday forever, and I'll never miss this call, let me know. But don't ever think that just because you're based, I know this wasn't your question, but don't ever think just because you're based outside of an area where there's a lot of startups that you can't compete. You can, because it costs you nothing to get a website, costs you nothing to talk over the internet. Look at this. This call is free, right? It's amazing. All this free stuff. It's incredible. Okay. And by the way, completely off topic, speaking of it's free and the internet and all stuff, my kids, whose life has been taken over by Fortnite, my 3 boys, they are all so excited now because Xbox players can play with PlayStation players, that sort of thing. And I'm not that father who says no video games for you. I'm like, you know what, dude, if that makes you passionate about what you're doing, if you love it, go ahead, because a lot of great programmers and engineers love video games. How did I talk about that? Way off topic. Anyway, I see I lost a couple of people when I went off topic talking about video games. Sorry about that. Okay, next question I've got is from Carlos. Carlos, how are you? I have to get back to work. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Carlos, for coming. I appreciate it. All right, next one I've got is from Grant. How many props do you have on a given day? I love it. Do you want to see? All right. Ugh. This here, these are props just lying around, okay? I'm like the absent-minded mad scientist. This is a Bitcoin miner, okay? I use it to mine Bitcoin. I use this for my complete cryptocurrency course, which is 24 hours too long, people are saying. This here is what I use for my blockchain in my cryptocurrency course. I burned into it the first time the first Bitcoin that was actually sent or a message by Satoshi to Hal, who's his programmer. Oh, and what I did also, now you're really gonna think I'm crazy, is I was talking about how to link the two blocks together. And the way that you link it together is here. I had this character Link from Zelda, and he on his sword he had a link to this Bitcoin address here. So, whoops, did I break that? All right, whatever. Zelda link, get it? Sorry, I'm trying. I thought the main character was named Zelda. It's not. This guy's Link. Zelda apparently is the princess. Hi, I'm 7. Yeah. Anyway, I have props everywhere, and what you can do actually, if any of you are designing a course, and I hope you are, is you can buy props on eBay. Okay. It's like show and tell. Remember that when you're younger? You can buy props on eBay, use them in your course, and then sell them back on eBay. And so you probably lose 5 or 10%. Think of it like you're renting. Okay. And I bought some really expensive stuff on eBay before too, just for the course, but it's just a rental. That's all it was. And for those of you that are ever giving a presentation at your company, bring props. You know why? You'll pick up those, right? Actually, you might forget everything you learned in this call, but you will always remember that I picked up those wooden blocks, right? You might think Chris didn't do a good job explaining it, but you'll always remember that. And so bring props. And what I do sometimes too is I create, I don't know if any of you have taken some of my courses, but I'll create customized props like a football. If you go to wilson.com, you can create customized footballs. And I'll show them in my courses. And for those of you that head up a division or a sales force, at your kickoff meeting, a little cheesy, but here I go. At your kickoff meeting, get one of these footballs custom made. Okay. And it can be a soccer ball for Europeans or Brazilians. Love you guys. And then during your kickoff meeting, throw the ball around. It's interactive, and have something written on the ball, and no one will ever forget that meeting, ever. So anyway, I love to visualize. And that's why the younger generation, like Instagram, is a big deal, because it's all visual. Okay. But I have a lot of props, dude. I have just an insane number of props. This here was all right. Whatever. I'll stop now. I got to show you one more. I have this here was a graphics card. I have this was an old Bitcoin machine that I took apart to show what's inside these miners. As I taught my students how to make a mining machine from scratch. The inside, it's mostly cooling stuff, like fans and stuff, because it gets really hot. One more. This here, I was explaining how electricity works for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency mining. And you can make a lot of money mining cryptocurrency, but only if you live in a country or a region or a state or a province or a town or whatever that has low electricity prices. Okay. And it's kWh, kilowatt hours. And China has 81% market share now of all Bitcoin mining pools, because the cost of electricity in China is only 8 cents per kilowatt hour. But I was using this to explain how it works. And this is, I'm not joking. And California is kind of a crazy place where I am now. It's called a grow lamp. I don't do that stuff. I never have. Well, maybe I inhaled once, but I was explaining it using this prop here. All right. I got a lot of stuff in the ground. You're right. Okay. All right. Next question. Oh, Michael, I missed your question. I'm sorry. This is an interview question. Would you prioritize meeting deadlines over quality of work, and why? Wow. Yes. Never miss a deadline, ever. And you can give examples in your life, right? So for me, I remember I was a software programmer. I still am. That's why I create my Excel courses the way they are, my Excel templates the way they are. But so many times as a software programmer, and for those of you in engineering, you'll understand this and appreciate it. So many times you want to create all these bells and whistles and these wonderful things as part of your software code, but you have to cut it out just because you don't have the time. You don't have the time, right? So focus always, and Michael, you can use this quote too. I'm going to make it up, I think. Focus on the need to haves and not the nice to haves. But Michael, you also want to say that you always want to exceed customer expectations. Okay. So the answer to that question is yes, I will always make a deadline regardless of the quality, but the quality will always exceed customer expectations. always, because I'm passionate about what I do. And here's examples in the past. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thanks. All right, next question. Grant, thank you for that prop question. Okay, so Dante Lay's got another question here. Sorry for my ignorance. You're so Canadian, Dante. I love it. You're saying sorry before the question. Represent. I love it. I love it. Thank you. All right. Sorry for my ignorance. I'm Canadian. I can say that. But Chris, how do you generate profits from a nonprofit organization? How do they generate revenue by receiving sponsorship? Okay, good. So nonprofit companies or 501c companies, they call them in the United States, they have wonderful tax breaks. Okay. And so they're allowed to raise money and not pay much in taxes. And Dante, I'm going to give you a great example, okay? Because I know you're in Canada. And this goes for anybody in any country, actually. This is interesting. You'll like this. So a lot of the time, private schools in different countries have churches on them. And the reason why private schools have churches on them is because if you have a church on your property in many countries, you can set yourself up as a not-for-profit. So there's certain ways to be classified as not-for-profit. Every country is a little bit different. But once you're classified as that not-for-profit, then you don't pay much in taxes at all, if any at all. Okay. And there's certain rules to be a 501c charity or whatever it's called in this country. Every country is a little bit different, right? But they don't really generate profits. And if they do, it's minimal. And most of the profits really should go to the beneficiaries. Okay. Kind of like Dante, you'll like this, like a REIT in Canada. A REIT, for those of you that don't know what it is stands for a real estate investment trust, which is kind of like a mutual fund that you invest in that only owns real estate. And by law, in many countries, 90% of the profits from a real estate investment trust or REIT has to go to investors. So anyway, that's what I would say. All right. So what to consider when it comes to an ethical dilemma? Okay, ethical dilemmas. So one thing I'll say is that a lot of you are going to go from one company to the next. You're going to keep going from one company to the next. And if you don't start your own company one day, I have failed as a teacher. But you will go from one company to the next. And the only thing you'll take with you from one company to the next is your reputation. That's it. That's it. So always be incredibly ethical. When you're faced with an ethical dilemma, if it's with a customer, just ask yourself, if that customer is my dad or my mom, how would I react? If you're not sure what to do, if you're confused, if it is an ethical issue, and if you think it might be, I'm not sure, then it probably is, I want you to go to your boss, okay? If you've heard insider information, and for those of you that don't know about insider information, watch my vlog called Insider Information. But if you heard information you're not sure you should hear, tell your boss, okay? Tell your boss, and don't transact in that stock, obviously. And probably the best thing I'll say about ethical dilemmas is disclose every risk. When you're talking to a potential customer, disclose every risk. Okay, always disclose every risk. Pretend they're your parents. Okay, always, always, always. Because the only thing you bring with you from one company to the next is your reputation. And I just published a vlog, I think 2 days ago, called Transparency Builds Trust. And you can watch that if you want more details. Okay, great. Next question I've got is from Nectarios. How are you? First time I've seen you on this call. Welcome. I hope you join us next week as well. Chris, we appreciate your candor, honesty, and generosity. Thank you. You're building a legacy and reputation that is changing lives. Oh, thank you. May you receive more wisdom and divine intervention in your day. Oh my God, God bless you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. One thing I'll say about that, I really appreciate that comment, is the best way to network is to help other people from your heart. And everything that I've achieved in life, everything I've achieved is by helping other people, then accidentally comes back to you. Now, I want to talk about a great Harvard Business School book called Givers and Takers. And the poorest 1% of people in the world are beautiful people with beautiful souls, like Mother Teresa. They give away everything. The middle 98% of people in the world in terms of net worth, whatever, are takers. Most people are takers. They take. But the top 1% of people in the world, the wealthiest, whatever, or the most successful, are givers. They give with their heart. And if you give with your heart and help people, it comes back. And it's not just karma, synchronicity, or whatever people call it. It's just a fact of life. If you help others, do unto others, whatever it is. If you help others, they'll help you in the long run. But that can't be your intention. It just has to be from your heart. And I actually, this is just me. It's just my DNA, who I am. I get depressed. I get depressed if I don't help somebody every single day. Kind of like this. Imagine you have $5, okay, or $2 or whatever it is. If you spend that $2 on yourself to buy food or whatever it is, your level of happiness is this. If you give that money away to somebody else, your level of happiness is this. Sorry for rambling, but thank you very much, Nick. Mori-san, you're going to sleep. Good night. Fujimori, where are you based, man? Where are you based? Let me know. If you're already sleeping, obviously you can't answer that question. But thank you, and you're always the first one to say hi on these things. So thank you. Okay, so another question I've got here is from, and by the way, the internet speed should be much better this week than it's been in the past. People complain in the past because of internet speed, which I thought was Google's problem or YouTube's, but I think it was mine actually. But we got high-speed internet now, which is good. Finally, I live in the technology capital of the world, but our cell phones suck here, and so does internet access. But I got it working now. I got 400 megabits per second, which is great. Okay. Raphael, hey man, welcome back. Hi, Chris. I had to pause the call. You had to jump to another call. I heard the whole video. I liked every answer you gave, and I'm really thankful for your valuable time and advice. Well, thank you very much for the questions. Great questions as always. All right, next one is from Vishal Sharma. How are you, man? Hi, Chris. I love what you're doing for people like us. Please tell me how to start a career in investment banking right after bachelor's. Okay, great. Thank you. So the best thing to do is this. If you go to a university where big investment banks come to recruit, then make sure you're obviously at those recruiting meetings, right? And go to your, if at your university there's a recruiting center, okay, an office, a job office, whatever, go there and ask, do investment banks come to campus? If they do, interview with them. If they don't, then make it happen by reading my networking meetings, Vishal, with people in common, have stuff in common with you. Okay. And I teach you exactly how in that book. And my success rate in getting meetings with people I've never met before is 95%. And I don't say that to impress you. Rather, I say it to impress upon you the fact that you can do it. You can do it. Just network like crazy and read that book of mine. I promise you, you'll make it happen. And Vishal, keep networking to get that job in investment banking if you want to do it. And if networking doesn't work and you work a couple of years after you've done your bachelor's there, if you work 4 years minimum, then do an MBA. Okay, and that will help you get that that coveted job in investment banking. Sorry, I actually had a buddy of mine, Dave. He went to University of Chicago, MBA, and he got a job he got a job in investment banking at Goldman. And it was so frustrating for him because he went to business school and all he did was he worked for managing directors and vice presidents. And it doesn't have to be Goldman, it can be any firm, okay? But he worked for people that what they would do is they make him make slide decks. And then when he was done with the PowerPoint slide deck, they would write on it, move this circle 1 millimeter to the left here. And that it drove him crazy. But just be ready. And this goes for everybody. If you haven't worked in any industry before and you're just finishing school or you're entering a new industry, don't worry. You're not, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. Don't worry. You're not going to be asked to do really hard stuff initially. Okay. You're going to be asked to move little circles over 1 millimeter, that sort of thing. But Vishal, just be ready for that. Be ready for the fact that if you join an investment bank out of undergrad, you're gonna be doing photocopying. Like I did consulting out of undergrad, and I first started in Ottawa. It was August 31st, 1994. I'm dating myself. I was 22, and I was at Accenture and they made me photocopy all night long, all for like a month, right? These RFPs, requests for proposals, which is in consulting what you do if you want to bid on a project. And the customer was Canada Post. I was like, oh my God, this is so boring. But I started reading stuff and I started learning. Anyway, so, but dude, Vishal, I was a great photocopier, man. All right. So next question I've got here is from Geronimo. Geronimo, how are you? Welcome to the call. First time I've seen you. Hopefully you join us next week as well. Thank you. All right. So hi, Chris. Greetings from Brazil. I would like to know if I give only one advice to my younger self about anything in the world, what would it be? Wow. It's a great question. That advice would be this. If you want anything in life, you have to ask for it. You have to ask for it. Okay. And failure is cool. Every failure gets you this much closer to success. And Chris, I'm talking to Chris when he's younger. Chris, I know you just finished school and you feel that if you worked hard in school, you get a good grade. And so now that you're working for other people, you feel that if you keep your head down, you work really hard, you'll get a raise or a promotion. But Chris, that's not how the world works. If you want a raise or a promotion, you have to ask. Kind of like if you want a date, you have to ask. I'd ask many more times than all of you for obvious reasons. I don't look like Brad Pitt. Well, sometimes I do. You have to ask for everything in life. You'll never get anything in life unless you ask. It's prophetic. Ask, you will receive. Do a search on YouTube. Steve Jobs Ask. 3 words. Steve Jobs Ask. Okay. And then also, after Chris, you realize that you have to ask for everything to get anything. Second thing is, I want you to know, and I'm talking to all of my students here. I love you all. Just know that nobody is smarter than you. Okay, Chris. So just know that when you start working at Goldman Sachs or these other places and people speak gooder than you, they're not smarter than you. Okay. And a lot of the reasons they went to these great schools and whatnot is because their parents went there as legacy. And just know that, and don't be insecure, Chris. Don't care what people think about you. Don't ever care. Anyway, so that was Toronto. That was kind of a long-winded answer to my younger, much less mature self. But I have no regrets. I've been fired by a company. I've gone this way and this way and this way, and I've worked on Wall Street and been depressed because I was chasing money. I got happier when I started chasing my passion. Always chase your passion. So let me see what the time is here. So I don't see any more questions here. And so if you have a question you want to ask, just type any character right now. Doesn't matter, A, B, C, whatever. Just let me know that you're asking a question. If I don't see anybody answer this, then I'll wrap this up. Thank you, Geronimo. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so I don't see any other questions here. So I'll wrap up this call. And so by the end of today, if you come back to this webcast, you'll see that this entire call has been written up, and you can click on any time or any question to get right to the answer. I want to thank you very much for your time. And your great questions. This has been the best call so far. God bless you all. And I will see you next week at the same time. Thank you.